mean, I can think of so
Getting
many
moved out, and
things that wall plays that would have been
there's a
so
pretty big
bad.
group of folks getting moved to the overflow.
Oh,
As
that's
I was
right.
coming in. Is that true?
I forgot that.
I would have had to own it. There's no doubt about
I
it.
forgot that existed. Or something. Parks and Rec. This is actually what
Nothing. I have not popped over to see the site.
Oh, the Merrily stuff.
Yeah, I have it. I want to. Oh my
I'm dealing with the same thing with my next door neighbor right now that hasn't placed down in 3 years, and they're like, it's super eyesore and it's super gross. And Jay doesn't move super fast. Like, I don't know
6
how
o'clock.
to handle that or what's appropriate.
Okay, we ready? Yep. Okay. 6 o'clock, I'm going to call this meeting to order, please. If everyone can please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Commissioners, do we have anything we'd like to add or take away from the agenda?
I do have a question for clarification on the agenda. As relates to item number 9, the request is for 2 separate votes, correct? One for the ordinance amendment and one for resolution?
No, it's a combined vote because the resolution is the document that adopts the ordinance by its very terms.
Okay,
So it's one vote.
so one vote. All right. And then how will we be handling the sub-item 9A? Will that be kind of wrapped up into that discussion, and we do public comment over everything at once?
I will take public comment over everything at once. However, the vote will, to be consistent, I'll take public comment after the introduction like we have previously. And then we will have the introduction, community commissioner conversation, then a vote, then the information for 9.1.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then we can move on to the next agenda, which is the Hearts of Gold presentation. If you'd like to come forward and do your presentation. Oh my gosh. Please introduce yourselves as well, if you don't mind.
Hi, my name's Hillary Griffin. I'm a senior at the high school. I've been on the Hearts of Gold Student Committee for the past 2 years. I'm the student leader in Kids Night Out, Give Backs, Media, and Community Outreach departments for the committee. When I'm not working on the committee, I also play on the East Girls Lacrosse team, and I'm involved in many other school clubs around the school.
Hi, my name is Vivian Cervini. I'm a senior at the high school. I've been on Hearts of Gold committees for 3 years, and I lead sponsorships, letters, and I help out with givebacks, t-shirt sales. And outside the committee, I play field hockey, and I'm involved in many other clubs around my school. Hearts of Gold is a community-wide fundraiser where students, parents, educators, administrators, and community members come together to raise funds and generate awareness for a local nonprofit organization.
Hearts of Gold was founded in 2009 and has raised over $1 million for our partners. This year's partner is the Conductive Learning Center, which is an organization that helps individuals with motor challenges achieve physical, cognitive, and social independence.
To raise funds, we look for our community for help. We get our schools involved. For example, at the elementary schools, we do Kids Helping Kids, which is kids doing household chores, lemonade sales, etc., to make money and donate. At the middle school, we do Penny Wars, which is a grade level competition to collect the most change. And at the high school, we do Kids Night Out, where kids ages 4 to 12 can visit with high schoolers, do crafts, play in the gym. And we also do Food Truck Friday at the high school. We also raise funds through sponsorships, t-shirt sales, and restaurant and business givebacks.
Hearts of Gold isn't just about raising money, it's also about raising awareness about our partner and throughout our community. Hearts of Gold is a very unique thing that doesn't happen at any other school in our area. So it's a unique opportunity for students and other community members to make an impact and be a part of something bigger. Ways that we spread awareness are through our social medias, community outreach, business givebacks, our booth at the Harvest Festival, presentations like this, going on the news, and of course our big football game.
All of our hard work leads up to the football game, where we present the check to our selected nonprofit. The Hart School football game is on October 24th, and we invite you all to come.
Thank you so much for this opportunity for us to speak to you about this organization that means so much to us and the great community of East Grand Rapids. Mayor, we would like to give you a Hartsicle t-shirt, and commissioners and attendees, if anyone else would like a t-shirt, information can be found on our website and social medias.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Thank you, you guys did a great job. Do we have any questions for the Hearts of Gold? Okay.
Way to go.
Thank you, thanks for taking the time. And you guys picked a great night, as you can see, to spread awareness, so thank you again. Okay, now I will move on to, next on the agenda is the report of mayor and city commissioners, including committee liaison reports. And I will start with Commissioner Skaggs. Do you have anything this evening?
Yes, I'd just like to report into our city staff that the number of comments and questions and concerns that I'm getting about electric scooters and e-bikes on our sidewalks and streets has increased incredibly since the beginning of school. I know that there's been some internal conversation, and I just want to encourage us to continue down the path of figuring out solutions that are going to work for the community, a multi-pronged approach that looks like ensuring safety and enforcement so that our kids and our drivers are all safe as they're moving about the city. There's been quite a number of incidents with kids going quite quickly down the sidewalks or down the roads without helmets on scooters and e-bikes. And I think there's a growing number of people who are concerned, especially as we approach the early morning hours of kids going to school when it's dark and evenings that are darker as we change into standard time away from daylight savings time. So I appreciate the conversations, hope we'll keep them moving towards some city-led solutions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burdick?
Parks and Rec met, and we are looking forward to the EGR Harvest Festival, which is coming up on October 18th. Always a great event. I encourage everybody to come out. I'd agree with Commissioner Skaggs. I think that's a good conversation to have regarding e-bikes and scooters. It's pertinent.
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Wesley?
Yeah, so two things. Yeah, I'm echoing the same thing that's been said, but the two commissioners that I've been also seeing a lot of chatter and some people reaching out about the concerns of that. So it's definitely on the forefront of our minds. Worth definitely having conversations about how do we be able to help keep both kids, drivers, and everyone safe while navigating through state law, which seems like sometimes that's a little bit hard to do, how that's going to weave in. Second thing I'd like to bring up is that, there's a number of residents that have reached out, specifically in Ward 2, which is the ward I represent, with the break-ins, and they've seen that they've escalated as recently. So I did get a chance to respond to every single one of the residents that reached out. I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Charles, Director Bukema, and did relay that information back to those residents, but I'm sharing it with you again today, is that they are very much aware. I want to implore that everyone please lock your doors. Don't leave your keys or key fobs in the car, to making it even easier. Director Bukema said that they're working hard with their team on this. Is very at the forefront of their mind too, along with GRPD as well. Can't talk more beyond that, but it's definitely on the radar. I had a resident that also reached out and took a picture, said, oh man, there's the bad guys even now have like flashlights on their cars as they're driving between 2 to 4 in the morning. Director Bukema corrected me and said, it's actually us. They put an extra patrol so I really appreciate your hard work and staying on top of it and keeping our community safe. And so if you do see a flashlight, that's these guys checking backyards, making sure everyone's property is also safe. So appreciate that. Thanks. That's it for me tonight.
Okay, wonderful. Commissioner Hunter?
Near unanimous, echoing the concerns on the emerging technology of vehicles and devices. So we look forward to that conversation. I also, as the liaison to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we met on September 24th, I think it was, to discuss how the responsibilities for various zoning issues are broken out amongst planning, zoning, and city commission. Mr. LeBlanc gave a great presentation. If you haven't watched it on YouTube, it is available. Just speaks to a lot of the decision-making criteria required for each of those different zoning decisions and responsibilities.
So was that like an annual training?
I don't know. I haven't been on zoning board. I don't know if I've been there a full year to know
Okay,
whether it's
okay.
occurring annually
It's
or
kind
not. But
it was kind of like a quasi-training / refreshers for
Okay.
both the new members and old members to get.
Wonderful. Great, thank you.
Just very quickly, Library Commission met, and the really most pertinent agenda item is that we're in need of a couple of additional library commissioners. So if anyone's interested, please fill out the online interest form. If you're not sure where to find that, just reach out to any of us, and we'll direct you to the right place. And then just to add to the commentary about the e-bikes and e-scooters, just want to boost and remind us that a group of residents brought to us, I think back in May, the Walk, Ride, and Roll EGR group, this concern, as well as to Commissioner Skaggs's point, a multi-pronged approach to help us address this. And I look forward to taking up their proposals in the near future.
Commissioner Swartz?
I will echo that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, I like the unanimous support here, so looking forward to future meetings. Hopefully sooner than later, getting that on the agenda and talking about some real solutions to keep everyone safe. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I just wanted to say happy October, although it doesn't feel like it. I guess fall is in full swing. And that being said, to echo Commissioner Skaggs' concerns about morning, and the mornings are going to get darker. And if we can just all remember to slow down, maybe tell our kiddos to be a little bit more prepared, just to kind of, as much as we can, eliminate as much rushing as possible so that everyone can get where they need to go safely. Because it's going to get super dark soon, and if everyone slows down and is not in a rush, hopefully it's a little bit more of safe of a commute for everyone. And that being said, I want to open up to public comment now. So this will be public comment that's not on this evening's agenda. So something that's not on the agenda tonight. If you want to make public comment to that, now's the appropriate time. I am going to give a couple minutes extra because we do have the overflow room. So if there's anyone downstairs that would like to make public comment to something that's not on the agenda. So just to be clear, the Gaslight Investors PUD amendment is an agenda item. So now is not the time to speak to that. But if you wanted to make public comment to something else, now would be the time. So I'm just going to give us a few minutes just to see if anybody wants to come up from downstairs. And then we will move on to the regular agenda items for this evening.
I feel like we need Jeopardy music.
Yes, I was thinking that in my head. It's like Okay, filling the time perfectly. Thank you. If you could just state your name and address for the record, we appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
My name is Mark Armstead, 2202 Elmwood, and really what I'm here for tonight is just to talk about community. And there's a lot of stuff going on. The city has asked us to make a lot of heavy lifts financially. And I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I'm not used to public speaking.
You're fine.
But anyways, each time that happens, it's just a reallocation of resources. And my perspective on it is every time that we have to pay more or something, an expense comes up, it comes out of our discretionary income as a household. Makes it harder for us to, contribute back to the community through maintaining our homes or maybe providing some volunteer or help in other ways, or even monetarily help. So it's a real strain. And it's just, it seems like it's getting a little bit out of hand. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if there's a spending problem or if there's a revenue problem, or if we're just to the point where we need so much specialized equipment or so many specialized skill sets that, you know, the city of East Grand Rapids just can't handle it anymore. And if that's the case, maybe we need to annex with Grand Rapids. That's not why I moved to East Grand Rapids. But really, it's, I don't know if you realize the impact that it places on so many residents. And again, you have a very giving community. You have a very charitable community. But again, when you keep reallocating these resources the way that you are, like I said, it's, and the other thing is they seem to go towards specific entities rather than the community-based. But we all learn in investing that you want to diversify. You have over 4,000 homes here. And if you have 4,000 people over a 10 or 20-year period contributing to the community versus putting all your eggs in one basket, I think people are understanding my point, but I see time's running out. You know, it is sad to see what's happening. You know, I've lived here since 2001, and just there's so many people that just feel like they're being pushed out, not being heard, and then just you know, I think we need to look at our priorities and you know, not get lost in all the shiny toys or, you know, all the other stuff. I mean, you'll never be able to satisfy everybody. You'll never be able to have everything. Somebody's always going to have something newer, something better. And it's okay. We don't have to have everything. You know, I'd rather have good neighbors. I'd rather have good families. I'd rather be focused on the families. And so, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there anyone else that perhaps came from downstairs to make public comment at this time? Yeah? Okay. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, please. Did you come from downstairs?
Yes, I did.
Thank you, sorry.
Sure, no, it's good. I got some steps in. So.
Okay, perfect.
My name is Aaron Henderson King, and I live at 245 Houghton Pile. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the new circles, the traffic circles, and just how challenging they are to navigate. And I don't know if you're planning on assessing them again in the next month or so, and determining what you should, do about them sort of going forward. But visually, it is a challenge. I think physically, as you're driving, it's kind of a challenge to navigate as well. And if there's developments that are going to be happening in that area over the next while, the number of people who are also going to be going through there, it will also make it even more difficult going forward. So I'd like you to at least consider that, and maybe you already are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thanks for making the trip. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment at this time to something that's not on this evening's agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will move on to the regular agenda items. The first item is to consider awarding the sidewalk rehabilitation and replacement program contract not to exceed $200,000 for fiscal year 25-26 and for $250,000 for fiscal year 26-27. Introduction by Deputy City Manager, Mr. Lefebvre. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Commissioners. The city's sidewalk rehabilitation and replacement program is something that we've had in place for some time with the previous streets and sidewalk millage as well as the renewal millage. We've been able to be more or enhance our program to eliminate all defects when we're in targeted zones. So that's cutting, grinding, and then that's replacement of everything in those target areas. We also still, based off of inspections that staff does or complaints or concerns that we hear from residents, we still go out and still will replace or rehabilitate sidewalks elsewhere in the community. So tonight, we're just looking at our program specifically for the targeted rehab and replacements. We worked with Kent County Purchasing to bid this out. We did receive 2 bids, and the qualified low bidder is AJZ Concrete out of Grand Rapids. And kind of how I broke it down in the memo for you is we go till we're out of money for each of the targeted areas. And the items, the pay items that have the highest cost associated with them are your 4-inch replacement, which is your typical sidewalk that you would see, and then 6-inch, which is through drive approaches where you expect to have heavier traffic, as well as the grinding aspect there. So when we're comparing those, we give you the fiscal year 25-26 and fiscal year 26-27 quantity numbers to demonstrate to you how we've determined the qualified low bid. I provided the map here for you all, and it's in the packet materials. The areas we're looking at targeting replacement are in this area here, kind of the central part of the city for the next couple of fiscal years. We do have about 80 miles of sidewalk in the city. That's bumped up a little bit. We've added 2 miles of sidewalk on the north side of the city this year. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lefebvre on this agenda item?
Just one question for clarification. Is this fully funded by the millage, or is this joint funded with another program?
So this is included as part of the millage funding, and so we've prior with the previous millage, we invested over a decade about $150,000 with the renewal millage. We're bumping that up, and you're seeing that increase up to $200 and $250, so that we can get further. Prior to having dedicated funding for the sidewalk program, when you're looking at the areas, I think we have it going back till tracking it here to 2003. You might say, well, it looks like you got further with less money, but the reality is we left a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily meeting any sort of legal criteria threshold for replacement. So we left a lot of imperfections to cover the ground there. So we were really just trying to get the worst of the worst. With some additional dedicated funding, we've been able to go through an area, and we don't expect to be back for hopefully about a decade or so for any other rehabilitation or improvements. So we're more comprehensive.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lefebvre? Okay, thank you. Okay, could I please have a motion and second on this agenda item?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioners, is there any further discussion?
I'm excited to see we're going back through on these. And I would imagine that leveling these out can only help with snow removal on sidewalks as well. So I think not only will we get the benefits for nice sunny days and strollers and scooters, but hopefully just a more uniform snow removal program as well, and probably a little less wear and tear on the equipment, which I am all for. So I'm really happy we're going back through and doing this well.
Great.
Well said.
Any other thoughts? Since we have such a full house, would anybody care to make public comment to this agenda item as well, the sidewalks? Okay, hearing none. If there are no further comments, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have to consider casting a vote for 2 candidates for the Michigan Municipal League Liability and Property Pool. That introduction is by City Manager Charles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pursuant to our membership of the Michigan Municipal League Liability and Property Pool, which provides us insurance coverage for various matters for liability and property, there is a board that oversees that particular part. And so there are 2 candidates for that, Michelle Lavoie, Clerk Treasurer of City of Monroe, and Josh Moringa, Council Member of City of Granville. I do know Mr. Moringa personally, but they are requesting that we take action to cast our vote for the candidates.
Wonderful. Are there any questions for Mr. Charles on this agenda item? Okay. Was anyone here to make public comment to this agenda item? Okay, if there's none, I would go entertain a motion and a second for this agenda.
I move to approve the 2 candidates as outlined in Agenda Item 8 for the MML Liability and Property Pool.
Second. Wonderful. Any further discussion, commissioners? Okay, hearing none, then we go to vote. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, on the agenda, we have to consider the final reading and approval of Gaslight Investors PUD amendment and resolution. Again, introduction by City Manager Charles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before you is an updated resolution that has 5 changes to it. At the last meeting, as noted, the City Commission did do the initial introduction of the PUD amendment. As was discussed earlier in the meeting, the motion for this evening, to, if made, would be to approve the PUD amendment ordinance and the associated resolution. I do want to update the commission that the city did receive a protest petition at 4:38 today pursuant to the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, and the city attorney has had a chance to take a look at it, and I'll let him speak.
Yes. We anticipated that a protest petition might have been received, so I commenced research several weeks ago on this subject, reviewed the material that is under consideration tonight, which is basically amendment of a site plan, and determined pursuant to Michigan case law that amendment to the site plan is an administrative act, not a legislative act, and accordingly, it is not subject to the protest petition statute under Michigan law.
Do you want to speak to the petition itself? Or?
I did briefly look at the petition, and one of the risks of handing a petition in 25 minutes before it's due is if there are problems with it, you don't have time to correct it, and I would say there were numerous problems with this petition. We did not get any supporting documentation to show that the people signing the petition owned the property in question, that how much of their property was in that radius area. These are all calculations that need to be supplied in order to determine whether it meets the 20% test set forth by the ordinance.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
with that, we will, if the commission would like us to go over the resolution, if we'd like to, I don't know if there's any questions for Mr. Hoff in regards to the protest petition at this time.
May we see a copy of this protest petition?
We will get copies out to everybody.
Okay, provided later, yeah.
Could we see it now?
We'll get copies for everyone.
I don't think we have it physically with us at the moment.
I don't have it currently.
Yeah, we can have copies made. Were there,
So is that, are we taking discussion on this, or?
If you would like to
you'd
ask.
like to ask questions?
Yeah.
Sure, we can take some questions.
How about just for the sake of the audience, what was the protest petition intending to do?
The purpose of a protest petition is to raise the required vote from a majority vote to a 2/3 vote. With a commission of 7, that would mean a vote of 5 rather than a vote of 4, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Do we have the policy for submitting a protest, like all of the requirements that are required to be submitted with a protest petition laid out somewhere, or is that in statute somewhere?
I don't believe that we have an in-house document that does that, but I will say that in my conversations with the clerk, nobody made any inquiries as to what was required to be put in this petition.
So what you're saying is if had they done so sooner and perhaps asked questions, they would have been assisted by city staff as to how to properly hand this in? Okay.
I mean, last time we received a protest petition, it came in weeks beforehand, which allowed time to have the petition in a form that would satisfy the requirements of the clerk to be able to evaluate it meeting the requirements.
Thank you.
Once again, I would add that I think that portion of the discussion is irrelevant. The real key here is that this is administrative action and it's not subject to this statute.
Okay, thank you.
And this is separate from the right of referendum being discussed in 9.1 or 9A, however we label it tonight?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
With the exception that obviously there's overlap because it's
The legislative versus, yeah.
legislative versus administrative discussion.
But it's a separate category of petitioning for a
Right.
different type of
Right.
action.
I
Okay.
looked at this statute separately for purposes of this opinion.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Huff? Okay. Then Keith, move on to the regular agenda. Did you want to make an introduction?
Just as I noted earlier, there are five suggested five changes to the resolution that we've worked on since the last meeting. And I did hand out kind of a summary for the commission. Mr. Gianotti's memo does discuss on the next to last page also. So in regards to the city commission condition number 1, regarding private streets, sidewalks shall be constructed to standards approved by the city. The commission was seeking additional language as far as what happens in the future if there's different standards, things of that nature. Gaslight Investors has agreed to modification to the language that when that infrastructure is up for maintenance or renewal, basically, that it would be done to the current city standards at the time. So there was that component. City condition number 2, there was a discussion on the step backs. The planning commission had made a recommendation to look for facade articulation and building modulations for buildings over 3 stories. For at least 80% of the building is Gaslight Investors that looked at that. They've agreed to language for buildings C and D that the step back can begin after the first floor, but shall start at no later than the 3rd floor, and will include facade articulation. So when final PUD is submitted and overall architecture is submitted at that time, that's something that will be incorporated in there. The third item was City Commission condition number 3 in regards to closure of private streets, access, things of that nature. Talking through this issue, Gaslight Investors has offered language that clearly articulates that they will continue the practice of allowing community access in general and for special events. And it does go on to note that that sort of final language will be incorporated within the development agreement itself. The last 2 were 2 requests from the commission on what happens to the north-south pathway if the project is not completed. The Gaslight Investors agreed to language that if a phase is approved and constructed and then subsequently the PUD expires, that the north-south pathway would have to construct to the city's standards. And then the other was language surrounding the construction of the social hub for what happens if the development doesn't proceed in regards to that. Again, this was tied to building C and D. If final PUD is granted for C and D, that, and again, a building is constructed and the PUD subsequently expires, then the social hub area must be seeded, may include a decorative fence, or the parties may agree to some other solution. For the areas that were not constructed, the building pad areas, there's language in regards to that will, unless it's being used for approved parking, that they would also grass and seed that particular area and have to be maintained. Very similar to what's going on with the former Ramona Medical Park building. So with that, I can address any questions. We do have representatives from Gaslight Investors here who can also speak to this. Mr. Ralph, I don't think I missed anything.
No, you did a nice job.
Okay.
So I think in terms of consistency, like we have with the other, when this has been on the agenda previously, we'll take questions from commissioners for the people we have here, the professionals representing Gaslight Investors, or Mr. Charles or Mr. Huff, and then from there we'll go to public comment. So again, For the people downstairs, you will need to come up here when it's time to make public comment. I apologize for the walk, but that is where you'll have to come to make public comment if you wish to do so. So at this time, we'll just start with questions.
I have a question on number 1. I think we're on the same page. I just want to clarify the maintenance standards. I think we talked about maintenance such as like PASER ratings being built into the like operating agreement, the PUD agreement at the end. Is that the case? I just want to make sure, my point here is I want to make sure that we're not just saying when the developer gets around to maintaining, it'll meet city standards at the time, but that they will maintain it to city standards.
So we interpret the language that they will maintain, so if there is a defect within their infrastructure, that we would seek to do this. Mr. Lefebvre, you want to speak about the fence associated with Breton Village, just kind of the past practice with that?
Sure, so an example would be, most people are maybe unaware that part of Breton Village Mall area there's a portion of it that's in the city of East Grand Rapids, and so as part of that recorded approval is that they have to maintain whoever the current owner is of that property is required to maintain privacy fences between the residential zone and that commercial zone, in addition to maintenance for, there's a detention pond for stormwater in that area too. So when we have done inspections, or we've had a complaint regarding anything related to fences or just the stormwater detention area, we've notified whoever the current owners are. Sometimes the property maintenance team that represent them are unaware of that. We provide those agreements to them, and we've never had an issue with those being enforced.
Okay. And then I guess I'd follow up with the developer. Is that your understanding as well of this section, that it'll be maintained, not just when you get around to it, it'll meet city standards?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have on condition 1.
Okay. Did you have another question you wanted to?
Yes, the other question that I had was on paragraph 9. It's the new condition. New condition number 9, about the social hub being seated and may include a decorative fence. Is that fence meant to exclude, or is that a safety measure? Will the public still have access to the fenced-in seated area? Or am I the only one who's reading that?
No, thank you. That was my question as well.
Yep, I had that question as well.
Great.
Mr. Lennon, do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Was that clear?
I think so, and I'll do my best to respond, and maybe this will become more of a dialogue, because I think the way this came about was a little bit fluid as well. Because one of the ideas, or one of the questions was, what should we do with this, open area? And one of the ideas was, well, we might like to have a decorative fence that encloses it so that it's not unsightly. Other ideas were, well, we might like to have it seated. So we provided for the possibility of both. So basically, if it's not used for surface parking, it can be a combination of that. But at the end of the day, it has to be acceptable to both the developer and the city. So the city will have the last word when it comes down to whether it's a fence or whether it's seated.
And so if the city at the time says, you can put up a decorative fence, you can seat it, but just says the Ramona medical area is kind of like, it's not for public use, but people go on it. Is that your intention of it's kind of that middle ground? Or is this like no trespassing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't actually have the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know that was actually thought of, honestly. I think the thought was an aesthetic more so than an access question.
Got it.
Not sure that it would make that big of a difference, because it doesn't strike me as though it would be an unsafe area. And most of those areas are fairly accessible and used, and the owner is comfortable with that. So it would strike me that could be something that gets addressed by the developer and the city at that point. But that's a good question and a new one, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, I think, Mr. Lundin, this is maybe from the question I brought up the last meeting, was
think
just,
you're
hey,
right.
you know, in light of, if nothing gets built and it's still concrete, which is impermeable, knowing that we have a mission on the city end to, with carbon neutral, being carbon neutral and leaning more to more green solutions, my thought was, couldn't we seed it, turn it into a grassy a space to allow for more drainability, less of an eyesore until they come around to that next phase? So that
Thank
was
you. That's
that was
helpful.
what I was going after, and I think that's
Okay.
how they responded.
Got it.
Yep. We wanted to be sure to get that in. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That
Thanks
was
so
a good
much.
comment.
And just some paperwork, I do need to acknowledge, this is Pat Lennon for the record. I
Yeah,
had to
thank you.
state your name,
My
sorry.
name's Pat Lennon. I'm with the Honeyman Law Firm. I represent the applicant. Nice to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Looking forward to our conversation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got several. I'm happy to share airtime and back off on some, or I can go through them all now, but I'll start with the first one. Following up on Commissioner Schwartz's questions about condition number 1. So I sent language following our last meeting and discussion on this, that any private streets and sidewalks constructed by the developer shall be built to standards and guidelines approved by the city and maintained and improved according to additional or modified standards, guidelines, and/or policies as they are approved or adopted by the city. The language, of course, that showed up here was all maintenance and replacement of said infrastructure improvement shall be in accordance with city standards and practices in effect at the time of such maintenance and replacement. I think that this is different than the fence issue. And I think that we do need some stronger language here to accomplish what we're going for. Because I think that the language that's here leaves room for the developer to say, okay, well, I just installed, this sidewalk, and a month later, we pass a new requirement about, say, curb cuts for accessibility or something. To me, this language seems to say, okay, well, the next time it comes around for maintenance by the developer, then they'll take care of it, which might be a decade down the road. I would really like to see confirmation that as these standards are updated, that they can also then be enforced.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Do we, when we, as a city on cities' roads, if we have a new policy about curb cuts, I think it's a good point. If we have a new policy about curb cuts, do we go implement those citywide, or do we do them and when maintenance comes up?
Well, I think the answer is twofold. So if there's a change from the city's perspective, generally, if it's a broad change, there's not enough resources to do that in any given year. So it turns into, similar to what I just showed with the sidewalk program, it would turn into a program similar to what we do with lead service lines. That's a regulation that changed too. We don't have enough to do. We set a goal and a deadline, or the state government does, or the federal government does. I would say, for example, probably the best example would be related to ADA accessibility ramps, which is a minimum standard at the federal level. You're required to, when you touch that street for certain types of maintenance, to replace all the ADA ramps in compliance with that federal law. From 1994, that's been in place. I think we're starting to get close to that, but there's a lot of communities that are far, far behind there. So I guess the answer to that is based off of resources and based off of requirements for whatever that type is. It's very prescriptive, and what that is from the federal regs in terms of ADA ramps.
Thank you, Mr. LaFave and Commissioner Schwartz, but my question was not about curb cuts or ADA accessibility. I do understand the interplay of federal law and requirements and things like that. I mean, it's the first thing that came to mind, right? Sort of like a neutral improvement. Another example might be the installation of our rapid flashing beacons, right? We aren't waiting until it's time to redo a crosswalk. We are doing an intervention now. And so it's that level of enforcement, for lack of a better word, that I would like to see in here. So I guess my question is, was the language that I provided considered? And if so, why were changes made to it to what we see today?
Thank you. I think I might get my steps in too tonight. I'm coming back and forth. Again, I don't know that we specifically drilled into that. What we wanted to be clear about, and what I think is fair, is that if we, have an improvement that we make, whether it's to a street or to a sidewalk or part of that infrastructure, that if the city decides in a short period of time thereafter that they're going to change that standard or change those requirements, we shouldn't have to tear up the street we just repaired and build it to the new standard. However, like any other ordinance, when we do have to maintain it, then the portion being maintained, that new part, needs to be done in compliance with the new standard. And so we're comfortable with that commitment, just as we're comfortable with the notion throughout that it talks about the community standards, applied generally to the community. So, if the policies are general and they're applied throughout the community, whether it's the beacon lights or something like that, I think you're covered by this. But if it's something like a larger maintenance type item or a replacement of a street, I think our vision would be is like any other ordinance compliance issue, you would address that at the time you're making the improvements. So that's my answer.
So thank you for your answer, Mr. Lynn. Was the specific language that I provided discussed?
We discussed the conceptual ideas and things of that nature. We didn't get drilled down specifically on the language itself. We were looking for, in our conversations, both internally and with Gaslight Investors, was what is language that is acceptable to both parties for city commission consideration. I won't say both parties, but is acceptable to Gaslight Investors, and we're comfortable with that at staff level, knowing that it'd be subject to city commission approval. That's where we kind of settled in on this language.
So I would like to see us add some stricter language back in there, and if we need to differentiate between standard street reconstruction and other types of policies, then perhaps that's what we need to do. But I'm not satisfied that the language that we see today accounts for those things that may need to be taken care of more quickly.
Did you have another question?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
So also in the last meeting, I raised the issue of the final plan approval standards, which is section 5.48 in our zoning ordinance, and was looking ahead to a final plan approval standard that says provision assuring that open space areas shown on the plan for use by the public or residents of the development will be or have been irrevocably committed for that purpose. The city may require deed restrictions, conveyances, and other documents to be placed in escrow to accomplish this. Now, I understand that the specific mechanisms that we'll use to accomplish that are saved for the final plan review. But looking at the way that condition number 3 is currently written, I think that if we're saying we're going to figure this out at the end, then maybe we have too much language here, and we simply need to say, for example, the open space area indicated on the concept plan for use by the public will be irrevocably committed for that purpose. The final PUD agreement shall contain specific provisions detailing the specific mechanisms by which this will be accomplished. Because since we haven't worked that part out, I'm not sure that we need the extra language, or that we would want the extra language in there about reasonable requests, and if that, then that, when all of these details will have to get worked out later. I would prefer to see shorter, more concise language here that gives a nod to what we actually do have to work out.
Did you have another?
So I guess the question on that is, that seemed to take some folks by surprise when I brought it up in the last meeting. And has there been additional conversation or consensus built around this is something that we need to be looking forward to related to that open space in the concept plan?
Just as I'll note before is that in our conversations of proposed language, and I think Mr. Lennon can speak to some of the dynamics from their perspective of, we tried to, while we didn't get into that level of specificity, we did have that placeholder that this will be resolved, and the commitment for the additional or continued community access. So that, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we talked about is that this is something that would be considered at the time the final plan approval comes through. I was the one caught off guard because I thought you were quoting the conceptual plan approval part. I about fell out of my chair. So, because that did catch me off guard. But when we looked at it and saw that that's at final approval, we noted that that's not really for tonight, that's for a different time. That standard applies in the future, not today. And I think we have enough on our plate tonight. Thank you.
Then if I could ask you a direct question, Mr. Sure.
Thought the others were fairly direct.
A direct follow-up question.
Okay, fair enough.
Would you be comfortable with, so I think that this language is extraneous in terms of private street closures, temporary blockages shall be permitted. Because since we haven't worked this out, we don't know if this is fully inclusive of the things that we may be dealing with when it comes to this common area. Would you be comfortable with less language just saying, this is going to be irrevocably committed according to the required standards, and that's going to be in the final PUD agreement?
For now, I think we're comfortable with what we have. A lot of thought went into what is there, a lot of consideration with our client, and we're comfortable with, I think, what it is. And we think the city should be comfortable too, because when the time comes, those provisions that you're asking about will be addressed. So now is the time to deal with what's before us, and we hope you'll do that tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll restate that, I would prefer to see less language that's more direct. I think putting language that may or may not end up applying when we know this is something that we need to work out may kind of work us into a corner or just cause problems later on down the road. The last thing that I want to bring up, and I wonder if while we're having this conversation, whether or not like physical copies of the protest petition can be produced for us to take a look at. That I would like for us to discuss that protest petition and the referendum before we take a vote on this item. These are related issues, the two of them. I think that we need to talk about them in tandem. And I think that we need to talk about the implications of this, where we stand in terms of interpretation, application, to make sure that we are all really on the same page about what may or may not happen related to specifically the democratic rights of residents if we move forward before we have a full conversation about these two items.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about this agenda item?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Were there any other questions from any commissioners about this agenda item and the language?
If not, are we moving on to 9A?
No.
Okay.
Not right now. No.
So if we are at the end of questions, what comes next?
After questions, if there's no further questions, then we will move on, and I will move on to make some public comment.
Okay,
Take public comment.
Thank you.
Okay. That being said, before we go into public comment, simply because so many people are here this evening, I have been asked to address something that many of us received in our mailboxes last week. And this was a mailer that I think most of us received in our mailboxes. I could be incorrect. But I was asked some questions about this. And then I was asked to also speak to this because I feel like this may have brought some people here this evening. So before we go to public comment, I just wanted to address this in case people were here this evening because of this. So this addresses 6 points on here. One, that this development, and this is by a group called EGRresponsibledevelopment.com. The first item that they are stating is that, well, first off, I'm just going to say that there's some inaccuracies that I've been asked to address. So first, they say unsafe. No up-to-date traffic or safety study has been done. So regarding the traffic and parking studies, the city has already performed multiple traffic and parking studies. That is a fact. After building location and uses are finalized, additional project-specific parking traffic analyses will be completed to determine any needed street adjustments or traffic control measures. This has been stated by staff multiple times. Next on this card, they speak about this development being unfair, and they say and state that, and I quote, "Developer gets 20 years of abatements, taxpayers get the bill." This is the easiest to debunk. No tax abatements have been given, nor even discussed. I want to make it clear that no decision has been made regarding a brownfield authority, including whether or not one will be used at all. Period. This conversation has not been had. I want to make that very clear. Claims to the contrary are simply inaccurate. Next, I want to address the statement of overcrowding. They say, and I quote, "nearly triple the current density." So this is density math. The currently approved density is 107 units. The proposal adds approximately 40 units. Triple, as the mailer claims, would be 321 units, and that is not what is proposed. Next, they address that this is out of scale, twice as tall as nearby buildings. Compared to the approved Lakewood Hills plan, only one building in the new concept plan would be approximately 10 to 15 feet taller. All other buildings are the same height or shorter. To note, the existing approved concept plan includes two 94-foot buildings, while this new proposal shows one 70-foot building, representing a significant reduction in overall scale from what is currently approved. Next, they address the loss of character, stating that the design doesn't fit our community's look and feel. We're in the concept phase. We have not gotten to final design yet. That is down the road. That is not before us yet. So any claims about character or look and feel are purely speculative. No one has those answers yet. No one knows what this will look like. We are not in the final design, and that is the fact. Next is the address about not enough parking. Required parking has not been finalized. Overbuilding parking is also a concern. Formal traffic studies and parking studies are part of the next phase if the concept plan is approved. I want to continue and say, this recent mailer and website posts from a group calling itself EGR for Responsible Development have contributed to a lot of confusion and facts about this development. While claims don't align with our public records, processes, and professional analyses, it undermines trust, it heightens anxiety, and it distracts us all from thoughtful decision-making. Whether the mailer and the misinformation it has shared is the result of misunderstanding or something much more intentional, any misinformation only serves to harm our community, period. We cannot do this to our neighbors. Let's talk and speak in facts. We can all disagree on policy and ideas and still agree that our debate should be grounded in civility, transparency, and facts. I urge everyone to go to primary sources for their information. The city's posted agendas, staff reports, meeting videos, and adopted plans. And if you have any questions, please reach out to City Hall and our great staff members directly. In the years ahead, how will East Grand Rapids remember this moment? As a time when rumor and division prevailed? Or as a point when we chose facts over fear and strengthened our community through open communication, transparency, and honest, factual dialogue? That is the best way to make decisions. So now I will open this up to public comment. I hope that that has helped. Like I said, I addressed that because many members of the community were confused and asked me to address this. Before you make public comment, I just want to refresh the rules. Please keep it to 3 minutes. Please speak to the chair. No clapping or booing so that everyone feels safe in making their comments. Please treat each other with respect at all times, whether giving public comment or hearing and listening to public comment. So you may come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bonnie Mogul. I have been a resident of East Grand Rapids since 1978. My family and I use these words to describe our experience of these last almost 50 years. Upscale, welcoming, good vibes, natural environment, calmness. I am here tonight to state facts. I do not support approval of the concept plan of the PUD. Reason? Number one, 6-foot brick fence along the east side of the property of building C and D. Now, these are the facts, and I will submit this document that I uncovered. Building C units, when originally proposed in 2004, had 26 living units. Yes, the focus was 6-story building. Circuita 2024, this building C now had 48 units. Public outcry in February, the developers lowered the height of the building to 5 stories. However, the units in the 5 stories now is 42, a difference of 6 living spaces. Building D in 2004 had 19 living units. 2024, 64 units. 2025, still 64 units. Yes, 2 stories lower, 5 stories, but the same density. Density keeps coming up. So what we have in building C and D, 2004 that was approved, 45 living units. Current proposal, 108. Now parking is interesting. In 2004, surface parking, on-street parking, 52 spaces. 2025, 201. In summary, the increase in density and traffic, I believe, will negatively impact the current community atmosphere, from calm, upscale, welcoming, to chaos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Lori over there. We talk about confusion.
You could state your name and address, please, for the
Hi.
record.
My name is Nick Curcio. I'm an attorney reside at 16905 Birchview Drive, Utica, Michigan. I'm here to address the protest petition tonight. I do have copies for the city commission. I'll hand them to your assistant city manager here if you'd like to distribute them. A couple of things in response to the comments from the city attorney. Protest petitions are governed by MCL 125-3403. That statute begins an amendment to a zoning ordinance by a city or village is subject to a protest petition. It doesn't say anything about legislative versus administrative. I don't think that's a distinction. First off, I disagree that this isn't legislative, but it's clearly an ordinance. Regardless of whether it's administrative or legislative, it's clearly an ordinance. It's clearly subject to the statute. The second reason I heard as to why it was ineffective is that it was presented this afternoon. The ordinance says the protest petition shall be presented to the legislative body of the city or village before final legislative action. Here we are tonight before the vote occurs. We do believe the petition is timely. Finally, it says it's effective if signed by the owners of at least 20% of area of land included within the area extending outward 100 feet from any point of the boundary of the land included in the proposed change. Here, that's the PUD. We have the signatures of the D&W parcel. All three owners of that parcel have signed. That's by far the largest parcel surrounding the PUD. And we think the 20% area calculation is easily satisfied, and nothing in the statute says that we have a duty to somehow prove that in advance of submitting the petition, that once the petition is submitted, that falls on the municipality to make that area calculation, which here is very easy. You can just look at the map and tell that that's the largest parcel and that that's going to be satisfied. The consequence of the sufficient petition is that this the vote on the ordinance will now require 5 votes of the city commission in order to pass, as opposed to the 4 that would ordinarily be required for a majority. If the ordinance is declared to be passed with something less than a 5-member vote, we think that that's clearly subject to judicial review. There's been cases in Michigan challenging similar actions, and we believe a court would overturn that declaration and find the ordinance to be invalid. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have, and I'll be here if questions arise later.
Thank you.
My name is Win Irwin. I live at 1860 Lake Drive. I was born in East Grand Rapids. I actually have been here literally almost my entire life. And I've raised 5 children in the East Grand Rapids public school system. But I'm also a member of the Community Rebuilders, which is the local nonprofit that's the largest housing provider for the homeless in Kent County. In addition to that, I've been participating in a number of organizations that are working on solving our housing crisis in Kent County. That includes Housing Next, Housing Kent, and the Grand Rapids Chamber's Housing Initiative. You may or may not know that Kent County has a deficit of housing at all prices, which has contributed to shortage of affordable housing, long wait times to secure housing, an increase in homelessness, as well as high housing prices due to scarcity of housing and the inability of people to find housing near their employment. In fact, Kent County is in need of 34,000 additional housing units in just the next 5 years, according to Housing Next. Now, many communities, including East Grand Rapids, have stepped up to increase housing by increasing housing density. The Gaslight Village Development Project will be a huge step to increase the needed housing and make progress on one of our county's biggest issues. When there's scarcity of housing, people who can afford market rate housing often have trouble and often take housing for the next lower tier, which cascades all the way down the income ladder, which eventually creates long wait times for those looking for housing and homelessness increases. This scarcity means also that housing prices continue to rise significantly at all price levels. Now, I've been watching this Gaslight Village project for decades, and it appears to me that the city leadership and management has worked extremely hard to create a solid plan for growth for East Grand Rapids and is continuing to listen to the voices of our city. So I truly hope that this will move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin.
Niall Deems, 701 Laurel Circle. In a sense, I don't have anything new to say because I've said this stuff so many times, it's like talking to a blank wall. But I also want to disagree with the mayor's comments. And I think you all need to pay a little more attention to what you're doing here. Once you approve a concept plan, it's not real clear what you're locked into, but you certainly reduce your negotiating ability. And all of the nice talk about you'll work things out with the builder, well, maybe so, maybe not. This builder has had plenty of lawsuits. And of course, a builder always says, we'll be happy to work things out with you. They're not going to ask you for approval and say, no, we'll have some fights. So whether or not you can take care of these things later, as some of you have suggested, or we're just looking from 30,000 feet and we don't need to deal with all that right now, you're just fooling yourselves. And I think it's time to wake up and think about things. And for example, the parking garage that he was supposed to retain and maintain, he didn't retain it and maintain it. He came back to you and said, can I tear it down? It's no good anymore. And remember, that was built at the same time as the parking garage at the Varnum Building downtown, which is 5 stories tall and works just fine. He didn't maintain it. But you're going to enter into contracts with him where he says, I'll maintain it. And as has been suggested by a commissioner, how do we know what maintain really means with this guy? You know, you've faced him before, and it doesn't really come out that way always. And then to suggest that you have parking and traffic studies, and that's a fact. Well, you have some, and some of them don't count worth a crap if you just look at them. You had a traffic study from Vanderbrink and, I mix up their name, Fleece, and it said 9,500 cars a day. And then, a corrected study appeared that said it's only 7. But 5,000 of those 7 come out of 2 buildings that were built 20 years ago, and the other 6 buildings only produced 2,000 more. Good luck trying to get those numbers to work in 2nd grade. They don't work. The parking, he's cut in half, and he's going to have enough parking. Dream on. The parking garage is not where it should be, and where your earlier contract said it should be, up by Wealthy Street, for the things that go on, he's sticking it behind the D&W. To suggest that the Brownfield Development Authority has not been discussed, yes, it has. When you let him tear down the parking garage, it's in that contract that you'll consider him for that. You talked about it and thought about it already, and act like it's not even in your head somewhere. It's just trying to fool everybody so you don't have to deal with it right now. I'm sorry, I disagree with a number of your comments. And to be concerned about trust, 85% of the people in your community that have commented to you have said, don't approve this the way it is. It's got to be fixed. And here you are trying to push it right through tonight to get the vote on it and be done. And then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a memorandum that appears that says, up, and don't let it be referendum. We don't want the citizens to stick their nose in this. I don't think that's how you build trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deems. Some seats have opened up over here on the right if anyone would like to take a seat. Absolutely.
Okay, Marilyn Bosak. I live at 2644 Richards. Excuse me for my awkwardness in public speaking, but thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion. I've lived in East Grand Rapids for 65 plus years. I've never had an opinion or voiced an opinion until now. I believe East Grand Rapids has lacked its luster. We used to have a small village character like Ada until they also built new modern boxy cement structures. I believe we, as they, have also lost our charm if we proceed with this development. I wish that we could have built maybe like a small little gazebo area there or a park with a fountain to stay as the quaint village we once were. So I don't know if my opinion has any influence on this vote, but thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for taking your time. Come forward, Mrs. Anderson.
Hi. Betsy Anderson, 435 Edgemere. I'm going to keep it really brief, but honestly, you have a chance. I urge all of you to vote against this plan tonight. Why? Because it's not too late. You are not stuck. We just had a person from the developer saying they work with us. We can't move things after this concept plan. For example, it's not too late to ask for a bigger parking garage instead of accepting this maze of parking lots. Why are you not asking for these things now? We've been told by Mr. Huff that things can move about 5 feet, but if it's more than that, we have to go back and negotiate it. These are things that I do think the developer would have listened to. There are other things like where the parking garage should be. I agree. It is not in the right place. Have any of you thought about people living there and working there in the winter? How are people going to decide, I want to rent this or I want to buy this, when I have to walk 50 to 75 feet outside to get to my unit? I wouldn't want to do that. Not especially as an older person who has groceries. I also would want to be able to have visitors. We allowed that, well, we didn't. Somehow the parking garage came down. I'm sorry. You should stick to your guns and make sure that this is a successful plan. The way it is, you just haven't asked the right questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Tom Miller. I live at 1753 Asbury. First, I'd like to thank all of you and the city staff for all the work you're doing on this project. It's not easy. It's not easy from your standpoint. It's not easy from our standpoint. I'd like to share a few thoughts that I have. And I'm approaching this from the standpoint that tonight, possibly, the amendment is going to be passed to the zoning ordinance, and that will be the final step in the concept plan step of this project. And my concern is that by passing that, you're essentially, and excuse the pun, cementing into place the basic size of this project when you later may find that you want to downsize it or it needs to be downsized, and it's hard to break that cement. I do like this project insofar as it's adding additional housing to East. We need it. The affordable housing, the different types of housing, it's certainly what we need. And I appreciate that the developer has scaled down his initial project from 181 units down to 147. But I think that's still too big, and it needs to be scaled back more. And I know a lot of people keep saying scale it back. Well, to what? Well, from my perspective, in 2004, the citizens approved, I thought it was 104. The mayor says it's 107 units, I believe. But something along that order would be much more appropriate for this city. Traffic, I think, is one of the biggest potential problems that this development is going to have for the citizens of the city. We don't know how much it's going to increase. We don't know what it means in terms of pedestrian safety or changes to traffic controls or road improvements in general. And the answer to those questions may go to whether really this project is appropriate for East. Now, I've heard that the traffic will be about the same as the level it was back when the Medical Arts Building, Jacobson's, was here. I question whether that's the appropriate standard to have anyway. I know that in the past 20 years in particular, there's been a big increase in the number of other modes of transportation like mopeds, e-scooters, e-bikes, bicycles, one-wheelers, and I think a traffic impact study would take all that into account too. I have a number of other concerns about the parking being underestimated. The retail space that's being proposed it may very well not produce what everyone wants, and that's a shopping center like Breton Village here. I don't have time to go into all that, but I would like to sum it up and ask you respectfully that tonight, or whenever the appropriate time is, that you not approve the amendment to the PUD plan and that you ask the developer to come back with a scaled back proposal and also complete a traffic impact study, a full impact study, before there's approval of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Good evening. My name is Bob Bonifiglo. I live at 2033 Coronado Drive, Southeast. I'm a first-generation East Grand Rapids. My children are second generation. My parents have lived here 70 years. What you're doing makes sense. Everything grows and needs to move forward over time. But what I'm seeing, I'm triple boarded in medicine. I'm a commander with the Navy. Trust, respect, loyalty are earned attributes. There's been so much change over the last few years regarding this project that people are doing things like putting together a we don't want roster. They're challenging the efficacy of the information in a postcard campaign. People in East Grand Rapids, if you really want to serve them to the best of your ability, then put together a reasonable document and put it before the voters of the city of East Grand Rapids and let them fully get vested and fully buy in, whatever that is. Right now, I'm sitting here just tonight, and I've been out of the country for quite a while. I just recently got back, but I'm listening to the conversation about the traffic congestion and the kids. I've seen so many near-miss kids accidents shooting across intersections in Gaslight Village and even on Lake Drive and across Lake Drive. It scares me. On the other hand, Gaslight Village has changed considerably, mostly for the better. So when you put something together, don't just think about putting it together to get 140 units, whatever that means, apartments, condos. Do it with the foresight of people like me looking back in 70 years or 80 years and saying, damn, this city, this team, this contractor really did it right. And the best way to help and earn the trust and keep the respect of your constituents, put it in writing and put it on a ballot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Steve Giroux. My family has lived at 1635 Seminole for 26 years and definitely supportive of development of Gaslight Village. But just sitting up here tonight listening, there's just way too many unknowns to even think about taking a vote tonight, in my opinion. And I will say preemptively then, when you do talk about any kind of tax incentives for the developers, I'm a firm no on that. They've had 20 years to put together financing, and if it doesn't work, then they should just move on. I don't think the taxpayer should pay for any of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Fugger.
Good evening. John Fugger, 2738 Elmwood, 50-year resident of this fine city. Per my last 3 public comments, I will quote again, Stephen M. Ross, one of the most successful real estate developers of our time. You have to see where your risks are and evaluate. Before you take the leap, understand what can go wrong and determine whether you're prepared to handle it. Which brings up the traffic concerns, which have been brought up numerous times this evening, and the failure to follow through on a comprehensive traffic study. In summary, I find it reckless and irresponsible to move forward with a vote on the concept plan without a complete comprehensive traffic study. I would like to point out, going back over the material, that the traffic study was mentioned several times as an important factor to be considered before a vote on the concept plan could take place. And here they are. Letter dated November 11th, an attorney for the Lakeshore Apartments, memo to the city from Fleece Vandenbrink. The preliminary study is based on, quote, an underestimation of thousands of cars per day and fails to analyze the number of items requested. November 14th, the Planning Commission recommended that the concept plan be approved with the following conditions. Number 1, a comprehensive traffic study and pedestrian be done during a high traffic season. Physical vehicle counts at active times. A review of the traffic study would then also be available to be reviewed by the city staff to verify accuracy. This was supported by you, the City Commission, which recommended specific modifications, including the possible review of the study by an outside third party. April 20th, letter to the city by Progressive Company Jeremy Chapman. Quote, at this time, the Progressive Companies continues to believe that this project can continue to move forward. But, however, he said, we strongly caution that all reviews must be appropriately addressed in the traffic impact study report pending spring 2025. There was no spring 2025 traffic study. Where is the study? By your own admission, a comprehensive study using real vehicle data was never done. They used models, old data, model information. Traffic study would be instrumental in providing information which could change the character of the surrounding area. With that said, the Plan Unit Development Review Worksheet, question D, the PUD would not change the essential character of the surrounding area. Well, you wouldn't know. You don't have a traffic study. Question E, the PUD will not be detrimental to the excessive production of traffic. How do you know? You don't have a traffic study. Are you kidding me? You don't know what the traffic is expected to be. It is simple to vote without a study is reckless and against everything that you and others have put in writing before a vote takes place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fugger. You can arm wrestle for it.
Mine goes along with the last gentleman, so. Hi, my name's Sam Massey. I live at 1250 Woodshire. I'm a long-term resident of East Grand Rapids. I'm in favor of the planned unit development. but I'm opposed to the current revised PUD concept plan because I do not believe that it complies with the intent and scope of the February of '25 PUD agreement and the subsequent amendments and the conditions that have been raised by previous EGR city commissions. There are major issues in my view. Number one, the executed 25 PUD agreement specifies condominium development not to exceed 107 residential units, and this development intent is not reflected in the current proposed concept plan. Number two, the current concepts propose 149 residential units exceeds the 2004 PUD agreement of 107 residential condominium units by 42. And in 2008, there's an amendment letter from LSL Planning that was indicated that the City Commission included a condition that said, and I quote, "All future phases and amendments to the Jade Pig redevelopment PUD shall be consistent with the parking and traffic recommendations and conclusions of the Jade Pig redevelopment PUD ordinance. Any change that affects the number of residential units, the number and/or location of parking places, the mix of retail, office, and service uses, or other changes that would result in an increase in the need for parking spaces that is beyond the approved original PUD approval shall not be considered." And I'll repeat that. They said in 2008, your counterparts, the previous commission said, none of this shall not be considered unless a parking study has been completed by a professional traffic parking consultant that shows how parking needs for the entire site can be met. I don't believe that's been done yet. Has it? That's all I have to say. Oh, I did have one other thing. What part of shall not be considered is not clear?
Thank you, Mr. Massey.
My name is Stuart Citron. I live at 2615 Oakwood Southeast. I've lived here about 46 years. I enjoy living here. I enjoy listening to you guys talk about this development. I'm here to talk about three things, basically. I had a lengthy discussion with Anthony Morrow, who's in charge of this high school transformation project, a couple of weeks ago. We talked about a bunch of things from class size to different parts of some of the changes they're going to make. But we talked most of all about the parking situation. And Anthony told me that they're going to only have 135 parking spaces with the new high school compared to the 214 that they have now. That's not good. I said, how many students drive to school and where do they park? He said, we've got 250 students that drive to school and they park everywhere. That seems to be a problem. We're going to be short at least 115 parking spots, and that doesn't count any of the new inhabitants of the units that are allegedly going to be built. Second item I'd like to address is this Gaslight Investors project. Scott Weird has had 20 years to plan for this project, and he still hasn't revealed how many rental units he's going to have. He hasn't indicated how large the units are going to be. He hasn't done an environmental study regarding runoff into Reed's Lake. I think one of the people here, Dr. Pattison, brought up the environmental impact of that. That could be a major problem. He hasn't done a traffic study, which you've heard from numerous people. He hasn't done a parking study. And he picked up in the middle of a meeting here a couple of meetings ago and whipped out of here as quickly as he could so he wouldn't have to answer any questions. I think that was pretty poor. The last thing I'd like to talk about, with 1 minute and 8 seconds to go, is the CWD. And that's the name of Scott Weirda's business, or his old business, or whatever. C is for Sam Cumming, W is for Scott Weirda, and D is for Dan DeVos. Dan DeVos is Amway Corp. Everybody in the community knows and respects the company for all that they've done for our community. Laura Schwartz is an attorney for Amway. She's indicated she's in favor of this project, but she can't vote no, I think, on this project for fear of possibly losing her job.
Sir,
And
if
for
you
that
can
reason,
refrain from...
she must be
Sir?
recused from voting.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I've got 23 seconds left.
Just if you can refrain from personal attacks.
I'm not
we
an
would appreciate
attack.
that.
No, this is a fact. It says on her website that she is an attorney for Amway Corp.
You
and
know what
she
I mean,
can't-
sir.
She can't vote against it for this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there. I am Chip George, resident of East Grand Rapids, just coming from a scrimmage across the street with 8 East Grand Rapids coaches who are all for this project. The only reason why I guess I even knew that this was going on, along with I feel like a lot of people in East Grand Rapids, is I got this. As I look into, I think you guys talked about this, maybe I heard, but as I look into it, I called the one person on the list that I know, and she's like, no, I'm all for this. I didn't even know I was on the list for this website. And it's like, huh, that's interesting. And then I find out that Commissioner Hunter, his wife, has contributed to this as well, which that doesn't quite
Are
seem.
you going to stop him from the personal
I'm
attack?
listening.
It's not a personal attack, that's just a fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Okay, let's, no
Okay, sorry.
personal attacks.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm just here to say that I am all for this. I'm excited for what it's going to do to East Grand Rapids. I know 2 people that were going to move here. They were coming into work for Amway and Meyer. Both of them have ended up in Ada because it's like, whoa, this is awesome. I can buy a house. One of them built, one of them bought a house that is walking distance from Ada downtown. And I think East Grand Rapids needs this. I mean, it's been sitting empty for 24 years or whatever. I don't know why. I mean, if the height comes up, it's like, well, it's not as high as the press box or the high school, so that seems like something that should be taken into effect, or account, I should say. You know, and all this, it's like, boy, unfair taxes, I don't think that's even been voted on, as well as if somebody wants to put $100 million into your community, I feel like some of this should maybe just be thank you. So anyways, that's all I have to say. I'll let somebody else have my minute and 27 seconds left, but thanks a lot. Cool.
Thank you, Mr. George.
I'd like to make a point of order quickly. It is one thing to refer to an individual commissioner, to mention somebody else's family member in this is beyond reproach. I'm very upset you did not interrupt as you did for the previous guest.
So you're going to blame this on me? That we've had people come up and make public comment. I did not know what he was going to say. I was letting him talk exactly like I let the gentleman prior to him talk.
Just a quick point of order,
Thank you so
Mayor.
much. Thank you
What do you mean, thank you?
for the point of order. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your opinion.
sarcastic.
Thank you. Not at all. Thank you. You can infer whatever you'd like, sir. I'm sorry that that happened. Ma'am.
Good evening. After that, my name is Jan Palm, and I live at 3030 Bonnell. And I agree with all of the concerns that have been expressed, all of the lack of needed research. A lot is at stake. My husband and I have been residents for 40 years. We've raised 3 children, all of whom returned to EGR after working elsewhere or living elsewhere to raise their families. So I am representing 8 adults, including their spouses. And I also was designated among numerous friends because they just said their opinions need to be heard, and they do not feel they've been heard. The earlier conversation was about safety, adding to the density, the number of cars, the number of pedestrians, the number of students, in no way addresses safety. We are increasing safety issues. People with disabilities, and that goes for a lot of physical disabilities, are being very much overlooked and left out of access to the downtown area because they can no longer facilitate walking through the crowds with the kids that are around, and many need to drive up to the stores or wherever they want to go, and they can't do that because there's no parking. Regarding parking, when I drive through downtown East Grand Rapids, frequently there are absolutely, and I have been counting, zero, no street parking spaces. And the area in the DNW lot is also full, and frequently the store is empty because it is full of non-customers. So there definitely is a shortage of current parking. There are no spaces for residents, customers, people attending events, and then you add in all the non-residents. So there definitely is a problem there. Current traffic is unsafe. The traffic flow is difficult, the numbers are causing problems, whether they be students, adults, cars, non-car traffic, and just anyone coming through. The density of residents is already very high. East is known for that, and we're increasing the density. If a unit in the development is more than one person, chances are they will have more than one car. So the 1.1 car is quite hard to understand. I think there are too many unknowns in the discussion tonight. And the last thing I would like to say is I would ask on behalf of so many people that you listen, try and earn trust that has been lost, and that all needs to be done before the vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Postema. I'm at 2213 Wealthy Street. I'm one of the owners at Carolina Low Country Kitchen. And I know we as well have the mailer that came in, and we were a little surprised by some of it, but I wanted to say that we are all here today because we do love this community. That includes the investors, some residents on this are saying they want to save the charm. And to us business owners, unfortunately, empty shops and shuttered businesses aren't charming. Vacant plots and crumbling parking lots aren't charming. And empty streets aren't charming. And from our windows, the streets are more empty. What is charming is a thriving local economy, new families being able to move in, having housing for our aging population that no longer want to live in their large family homes. There's no place for them to go. The developer also lives and works here, and they do want to see this area grow and be beautiful and stay vibrant. Without that growth, businesses like mine won't be here. We're struggling. We've already had to start considering what our next moves might be. We don't want to leave this community, but the longer we wait on these things, the harder it is for us businesses to succeed. There are businesses going other places because they are moving forward, and we're not moving forward at a pace that actually helps the community do that. Growth and building more vibrant destination that is charming is what this community needs to be sustainable. The housing is what the community needs to be sustainable. Even the schools won't grow if we don't continue to have new families coming in. And we don't have the places for those new families because we have all these larger developments coming in and putting large mega mansions on little tiny plots and buying them all up. Businesses like ours won't be here, and we want to be here. And this is such a big deal to us because we do love this community. And I do think that the developers do actually love this community just as much, and they want it to be beautiful, and they want it to be sustainable. And I think sometimes quibbling over some of the things actually just makes it harder to move forward. I'm not saying those things aren't important, but I'm saying sometimes the larger scale, we just need to go. And it's hard for us to be here when we so desperately want to be here. But every quarter makes a difference. And I know not everybody can be happy. I know that. And that's why we just need to actually make some decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Postema.
Hi, I'm Tricia Bosman. I live at 547 Cambridge. I am a mom, and I'm also a trauma surgeon in our community. I have concerns about the parking and the traffic safety. I have almost been hit by a car. I was walking, and one of my friend's dogs got hit by a car in one of our crosswalks in East. My son walks to school across 5 crosswalks in order to get to elementary school. I don't want him to get hit. A car traveling at 25 miles per hour will kill 10% of the people that are, like, if they get hit, 10% of people will die. That doesn't include injuries. We're adding more EV cars that are 3 times as heavy as gas cars. Those do more damage, even at very, very low speeds at 10 miles per hour. I urge you, please consider the safety. We talked about safety. Consider the safety of our pedestrians. Look at the parking. Look at the traffic. I want this developed, but I want our community safe. I'm tired of seeing people hurt.
Thank you.
Good evening. John Kronowski, 775 Bagley Avenue. I live within 1,000 feet of the proposed development, and Bagley Avenue right now is very, very busy. And I fear with this development, it's going to become a major thoroughfare to get into that area. I have some other concerns about this development, primarily because the increased housing density from the 2004 PUD, the size of the structures, the lack of a public green space, and I say that again, public green space, and the viability of added commercial space in Gaslight Village. We've had 4 vacant buildings now in Gaslight Village for at least 6 months. Other issues come to mind, such as the lack of a comprehensive studies. You've heard that a lot tonight, especially for traffic congestion, safety. You know, e-bikes and scooters are everywhere in Gaslight Village now. And sustainability. You know, I'm a member of E-Green Sustainability Initiative, and nobody's really talked about that very much. No real discussion is focused on the environmental stress that's going to be put on Reed's Lake with this development. Reed's Lake is a gem of this community and needs to be kept that way. And what about the neighborhood areas surrounding the development? Somebody mentioned a 6-foot wall being placed between them and the north-south access road. Also, I question whether there's a question whether this is an administrative or legislative change to the PUD. I think that the people of EGR should be allowed to vote on this. And I think that's just an interpretation from one attorney to another. I think the people of EGR should be allowed to have a referendum and to vote on it. And it has become quite clear what the people really want. I'm not against development, but I'm against this proposed development. And I think this development would irreversibly change EGR with its character and of that Gaslight Village. I think we've reached a point in the decision process to ask the question, would this proposed Gaslight Investors development really benefit the long-term community interests and future generations of EGR? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kronowski.
Hello. Hi, I'm Calder Stanley, coming from 2235 Boston Street Southeast. And I would like to speak in behalf of my young generation who's looking out towards college and building a life. in housing and sort of what we are going to do in the near future. And so when I look at this project, I see that it is going to be addressing the housing issue. It has become grossly apparent that it is so expensive to buy a house. For reference, my mom bought a house on Rosewood after 2008, and it was for $300,000. Now it's over $500,000 for the same house. And all my peers are saying, how can I afford this? How can I live the same standards, or at least just live the same standards as I live with my parents? And we're coming to the conclusions that we can. If things go like this, if we are getting resistance or sort of rejections on here and there and sizing things down when something is so apparent like us. I know I'm a different spot from the audience behind me, but in my point of view and many others, it's just becoming very apparent that we need something like this. We need more of this around. And of course, we definitely need to be like, what's the impact? And of course, of advising a board of like, oh, we should do this and all that stuff. So I agree in that. And also on like the call for electric e-bikes and scooters is very, I've seen toddlers with no helmets going like 25 miles an hour on a rickety sidewalk, and I'm like, yeah, it's very dangerous. And so I think it's more or less because people don't really trust the roads, being on a road, than being on a sidewalk. So they stay on the sidewalk, and then we're having this conflict between people who are walking and people who are on 25 miles an hour. And so I bike was like as much as I can to school every morning, and I love the bike paths because it really separates between me and the cars around me instead of like this drive around kind of thing, which makes things much dangerous. And so to fix sort of the congestion, I feel like it's more of like the choice of transportation instead of having one option, which is the car. But I do agree that concerns of me, if not addressed, it might become an issue. But if you had more options for residents to take a bike or walk or, take a car if they need to, it sort of spreads out the amount of cars and things and makes things more diverse. So I think that this approval, if ever going to happen, will really do something great here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Tom Kapersky. I live at 2550 Oakwood. I'm going to keep mine short. I used to be on the Park and Rec Board when we redid Collins Park. And we did due diligence. We did all the studies before we voted. I have a feeling, and what I've heard over the last several months, a lot of this is not being done. We took into consideration what the community wanted, what the design was, and we let them choose what it would be versus us on the board. I feel this needs to be done for this scope of project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paparski.
Marshall Easley, 1540 Woodcliff Drive, Southeast. I'd like to start by responding to a little bit of what was stated by our local business owner a few minutes ago. The suggestion that without more local residents, the businesses are not going to be able to survive. Basically, that's how I interpreted that. Gaslight Village is a destination. It's a destination not just for people who live in East Grand Rapids, but for people all over West Michigan. People come in here. That's partly why there's all the traffic problems that have been brought up, and that's already been the case. It's been a destination. It's going to continue to be a destination, and the concerns of local businesses are obviously valid. I've watched a lot of turnover happen in Gaslight Village in the last few years, just since COVID, but I do feel like the image she painted that if this development is not approved, that Wealthy Street is suddenly going to start looking like the Great Recession, I just don't find that credible. There may be some kind of impact. I don't know what that would be, but I do feel that our local businesses are going to continue to survive and thrive and prosper without this development. Also, I just would like to concur with the idea that it just seems to me that once an approval has been made, once it's been voted on, it just seems it would be harder to go back and change anything later. So like, if we're concerned about the character, the appearance, I know we don't know any of that now, but it seems like once you've approved it and once the developer knows they can go ahead, that it's just going to be a lot harder for the city commission, the residents, anybody who is unhappy with it to go back and change that. You lose clout once you've done that. And finally, I believe that ultimately, the people who should be making this choice are the people who are going to have to live with the result, the people in East Grand Rapids who live in this community, who go to Gaslight Village frequently. We're all going to have to live with whatever happens here, whatever decision is made. So I also agree that this should be put to public vote. I feel like that is the only appropriate way to decide this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Easley. Hi, Dr. Patterson.
Nancy Patterson, 2104 Gorham Drive Southeast. Thank you for your time this evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I had the pleasure of having coffee with a couple of the commissioners a few weeks ago. At one of the coffees, I heard a resident voice strong support for this current PUD. She claimed there was a lot of support for this development and claimed there was a lot of misinformation being spread. The mayor has addressed some of that today. She went on to say that the people who support this project feel as if they cannot present here at these meetings or online, afraid of us, the resistance, afraid of us, afraid of those of us who want this development, but smaller, less dense, more parking, environmental studies, etc. I want to hear from them. I want to hear their views. I do not have access to them. Everybody I know is against it, but this resident said there was a lot of support for it. I want to know what they support. What is it about this development that they like? I was happy to hear a couple comments this evening of support, but nothing specific about why they're really jazzed about this development. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson.
Hello, Sarah Massey, 1250 Woodshire Avenue, longtime resident, parents, well, now we're the grandparents, I guess. I'd like to read a letter from David Decker, who was not able to be here, but he's very involved, and he says, this is a quote attributed to Bob Marley. "The greatness of a man is not how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient." On July 21st, city commissioners and the mayor declared, quote unquote, all standards met. They were referring to the concept plan with Building E in the middle. Immediately after that declaration, the city commission formally began discussion on the ordinance and resolution, the legal documents to approve the concept plan. At the September 9th City Planning Commission meeting, City Attorney Huff stated regarding the concept plan from July 21 with Building E, that the city's traffic engineer would, quote, could already look at that and say, this has trouble written all over it, end quote. This is a direct quote from the transcript of that meeting. Yet with Building E in that location, in the concept plan on July 21st, city commissioners and the mayor declared all standards met. One commissioner stated during the July 21st City Commission meeting that the concept plan did not meet with the city's master plan because the maze of parking lots was a detriment to health and safety. Mr. Giannotti, city zoning administrator, in his July 21st memo to the mayor and city commission states, for the purposes of approving the concept plan, the first and foremost responsibility is to follow the required standards of review for the concept that the applicant is presenting. Do the right thing, withdraw the declaration of all standards met from July 21. It was reached illegitimately. Engage in a review of standards for the new revised concept plan that the applicant has presented. Do the right thing in the right order. Respect the process, respect your fellow commissioners, respect the developer, and respect the residents of East Grand Rapids. Thank you, David Decker. And on a personal note, I urge you not to vote for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Massey. Hello, Mr. Anderson.
Hello. Jerry Anderson, 435 Edgemere Drive. The faith of the people of East Grand Rapids in the decisions made by its commissioners has always been based not on trust in the individuals elected, but in the process of electing them, in the process by which decisions are made. We've rightfully trusted that our officials will abide by their oath of office, adhere to the rules set forth in the city code, and be transparent in their deliberations. In 2004, the city went through a process much like where we find ourselves today. The people had different opinions on what was best for the community. The mayor at that time, Cindy Bartman, said she welcomed the prospect of a community-wide referendum that the people of East Grand Rapids should have the say on what is best for their community. The people of East Grand Rapids then voted to approve a development different from today's development based on the revenue that it would bring. After the vote, the decision was accepted without conflict. People had faith in the process and accepted the outcome. This commission has painted a different picture from that one. Promises are made and not kept. Dealings are made behind the scenes that exclude the commission. Commissioners with dissenting points of view are silenced. At least 4 individual commissioners have told me that they have been instructed that the city will be sued by the developer if they do not vote to approve this. Our city manager has said that he would rather be sued by the residents of this city than by the developer. The process has been shameful. Back in the spring, in these chambers, we were told by the mayor that traffic and safety studies were being finished and would be available by the end of the summer. Now we're told they will not be completed because the developer will not pay for them. This summer, the important topic of community character was brought up. It was stated that it was such an important topic that it could not be discussed until Attorney Huff brought in examples of case law to guide the discussion. Mr. Huff has declined to do so. Last meeting, when the topic was brought up again by a commissioner, the mayor dismissed the topic with the statement that we already discussed that. No, we pointedly and purposely did not discuss it. Now we find attempts by the city to completely block the input of its residents. Mr. Huff is claiming the decision, which must be voted on by this legislative body, is somehow not a legislative decision. I can read. Our city code is very simple and clear. It is a legislative decision. Members of this commission, fear of litigation is not a way to make important decisions. Do not block input from your residents, even if it is convenient to the things that you want. Respect the process that you were elected to follow, and we will respect whatever decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Hello, my name is Chris Chappis. I'm a resident at 1026 Monterey Drive. I'm also a licensed attorney. Before I get into discussions, I want to point of I want to make a point of how uncomfortable I was that City Manager Charles was reaching out and having conversations with the Development Council last meeting and asking for advice. We have a highly qualified city attorney. The city attorney represents the city of East Grand Rapids, and your communication should be directly with the city attorney and City Attorney Huff. So going forward, it concerns me that we're negotiating with the developers' counsel, who I'm not questioning his qualifications, but is not looking out for the city's best interest, is looking out for the interests of the developers. And all of us, especially anyone on the committee, should be very concerned that City Manager Charles is having these discussions. If he's having these discussions in public, what kind of conversations is he having in private? I'm very concerned by that. Second, the lack of transparency in this process has been very poorly done. I keep hearing, as we referenced above, we're going to get sued, we're going to get sued. We're going to bow down to a developer as opposed to looking yourself in the eye and saying, what did the oath that you took when you took this job? You took an oath to protect the city of Grand Rapids and support the people. All I hear is arguments about whether it's administrative or legislative. I would like to see that opinion because as an attorney, I have some strong opinions of, one, whether it's administrative or legislative, wouldn't you prefer to have the vote of the people listened? That's what you did when you took that oath of office. Now let's go about, I had a great opportunity to speak to you in February, and I wanted to just talk about some of the things we haven't done, because we've talked a lot about what we have done, but really what we've done is sit on our hands. So in February, I asked, how are the planned renovations of the high school going to affect with this planned development going on at the exact same time? We haven't done a traffic impact study. In addition to the parking and all that, we haven't even considered the 900-some students of East Grand Rapids that are going to be displaced in the high school going out to lunch during 2 lunch hours, another safety concern. We haven't considered the utility and environmental assessment, more buildings, fewer green spaces, additional strain on city water, sewer, and stormwaters. We haven't done a parking study. We haven't discussed the spillover effects or how that will affect Reed's Lake. We haven't discussed the adjacent landowners' rights. I understand there's a petition that the city council received today, and yet we're not reviewing that or discussing it at the largest adjacent landowner. We haven't discussed the financial and public services impacts. We have discussed, and I've discussed with many of you, the implications of the brownfield development. And to think that those two things are not tied, I would ask the developer, will this thing go on without that brownfield abatement? And my answer, and I think his answer, would be no. We need more transparency. We need more community involvement. The city, its residents, Gaslight investors all share a responsible development, yet approval of this amendment without proper due diligence is a disservice to our community. Before moving forward, we have to understand the economic and social benefits outweigh the long-term costs, clear disclosure of the types of units, expected population growth, and long-term impact. Residents fully understand, we just offered 5 amendments today, the implications of subsidizing this private development, and sufficient community input and engagement in the decision-making process. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chappis.
My name's Janet Deach. I live at 562 Greenwood. I guess I'm confused. This is supposed to be the second reading of the resolution, but all I heard tonight was the changes. So I'm just confused. I'd like to hear the resolution read in its entirety you guys have all agreed to, and have it done twice, because that's my understanding what you're supposed to do. So that's just confusing to me. I also I believe that the referendum, it sounds like you might have a choice on whether it's administrative or legislative, why wouldn't you choose legislative and let the citizens vote on it if we decide that's what we want to do? So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Deach. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment at this time? So Ben, have say your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm Brian Hamrick. I live at 3004 Oakwood Drive. I've been a resident for 20 years, and I am happy to see that there's development hopefully going to be happening at this lot. I've waited a long time for this to happen. And I'm hearing a lot of concerns tonight, and I think that from my perspective, a lot of these concerns have been addressed or are to be addressed through the process. And I think what we underestimate is just how good our city staff is at working with the developer, working with the commissioners and the community to kind of address these issues. And I think they've done a good job. And I found there to be a lot of transparency in this process. And there's been a lot of meetings and opportunity to come up and express our opinions. And I think now at this point, I would just like to say I'm in favor of this and be one of the voices in favor. And hopefully you vote for this to happen. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hamrick. Would anyone else care to make public comment?
Just so you know, Madam Mayor, I've been texting Derek and no one else downstairs wants to make a comment.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you for checking. Okay. Okay, then at this point, I will close public comment and bring the discussion back up here to the commission. Oh, where's my agenda? Okay, at this point, we are going back to the agenda item number 9 and to consider the final reading. We've given questions and heard public comment. So before we go on to, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second and then further conversation from the commission.
I did request previously that we, before we move to the vote, that we have conversation about the issue regarding the protest petition and the referendum.
Would that fall under 9.1?
If I need to make a motion to
This
adjust
just-
the agenda, I can do that to move this up.
Or, Madam Mayor, it make sense to go to closed session? Is there attorney-client stuff that we need to understand better and discuss?
Could be. I mean, that's up to you.
So I'm sorry, what was your question again, to discuss the protest petition beyond what the city attorney has already informed us of this?
To have a conversation about the protest petition and the right to referendum, because they both hinge on the same interpretation.
But the agenda item that we're.
Like I said, I can make a motion to amend the agenda.
Okay, go ahead, if you'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
I move that we move item 9A and add discussion about the protest petition received today to occur before a motion is made regarding a vote on this item.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Huff, is there discussion on this, or do we go right to a vote?
There could be discussion.
Okay.
Discussion.
Can I guess I have a question on why don't we just keep it in the order that we have? I think we can have the discussion on 9 as it is, and then we have this next one talking
I
about.
was hoping to have that discussion if the commission so chooses at 9.1.
Yeah, I think
Is that what you're
the
saying,
reason.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, I guess just, I think because we've dug so much into what it is that we're voting on, the ordinance amendment and resolution, my preference would be to close that topic and then move on to the right of referendum issue as well as the protest petition discussion, because those seem like related topics to me.
So your preference would be to keep the agenda as is?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be my preference as well. Any other
Well,
thoughts?
the reason I seconded the motion was due to the fact that we're going to end up re-discussing the key central point to the entire conversation tonight, which is the administrative versus legislative position that Attorney Huff has taken. And it's central to the conversation around agenda item 9. So I think with a full understanding of Attorney Huff's position, we can better speak through what the vote will eventually be in Agenda Item 9. Is that?
Yeah, I would say taking a vote on these two documents as they are constructed, like I talked about in our last meeting, is de facto a vote of support for Attorney Huff's interpretation, and I think that we need to have additional conversation about that interpretation, especially in light of what we've heard this evening from a couple of other attorneys, that we need to carefully consider this.
Which was my question about whether it makes sense to go into closed session, because what I heard in public comment is that there's a possibility of court action.
As I say, Commissioner, I'm certainly not opposed to going into executive session. I think that might be a better place to have
That
the
would be
discussion.
what I would move, that we have the discussion.
I would prefer that we do this in an open meeting. I mean, I think we've taken a lot of hits about transparency, and given the nature of this cutting right to the heart of democratic process, like I think that it would benefit us and our residents to hear this conversation.
I don't think it's fair or accurate to talk about going into a closed session to discuss legally privileged matters as squashing a democratic process or transparency. We do a disservice.
That's not what I'm talking to as squashing democratic processes.
We do a disservice to our residents and to our city if we have a discussion about something that impacts our position if there were potential litigation. There's been a lot of discussion about whether there's a threat of litigation, and maybe it's a term of art issue, but like there is no threat of litigation right now. Us thinking about and anticipating what may come next as 5 different outcomes, if yes, if no, considering what litigation might look like is just responsible on behalf of our residents. So I appreciate the thought of like being more transparent. I hear everybody saying more transparent, but I don't want us to say anything or do anything that undermines a legal position that we might have to take to protect our city in the future, which is all to say I think I'm in agreement with Commissioner Skaggs that perhaps it's best if we briefly pop out into an executive session and make sure that we're not doing anything that harms our city in the future.
So first off, we have a motion and a second on the table to move agenda item 9-1 to the top and have that discussion first here in chambers. Let's go to a vote on that. So unless there's further statements, so the current motion, if that's correct, is to move 9-1 up to the top and discuss that now prior to going to 9.0 in the vote. Is that correct?
To move 9A and to include discussion of the protest petition as well.
Okay.
Prior to making a motion on a vote, yes.
Okay. So given that, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just a quick point of clarity. So 9.A, I read this as informational purpose only.
Yes.
Was this meant to be discussed tonight, or was this information only for us to digest for later?
The intent was not to get into the discussion, just to simply lay out kind of next steps if approved, what would, there had been a question on the right of referendum and petitions and things of that nature. So we were just providing that information to the commission on basically the process for if there's a effort to pursue a right of referendum petition, that what would the city clerk do if, in regards to that. So
just to clarify, would it be the city's position that our vote on this matter would not hinge on our residents' ability to take this up as a right of referendum?
So what the intent...
We should be viewing it independently then of this 9.1?
So the intent of the memo was simply that, because we know there may be interest in pursuing a right of referendum, the question, in part because of Mr. Huff's legal opinion that it's administrative versus legislative, the question before the city clerk was, okay, what's next if there was a vote this evening to approve? When we looked at the city charter, the charter is clear that residents can pursue the petition and then ultimately a decision, if a petition that is submitted, meets all the requirements, number of signatures, things of that nature, then that will come back to the city commission at a future date. But the intent of the memo was simply to go, or to note, yes, the city clerk, if residents are following the process, that yes, she would provide petitions, things of that nature, and the charter speaks about that entire process. So the intent was more of process post any consideration by the city commission. It was not anything beyond that.
Okay. More thoroughly, I guess my concern before we take a vote is that tonight's vote is essentially a vote in approval of the standards. So without having, in our view, my view, a conclusive conversation around standards, the right of referendum question puts us squarely at an impasse as a commission, really, to decide based on how we feel the information's been presented up to this point, or whether we feel the residents, if it doesn't pass, or if it does pass, right, the concept plan passes through, should the residents be able to weigh in and have some input and opinion on that. So for me, a vote on the standards being inconclusive in an administrative sense does not provide me the clarity in terms of not having the right of referendum question answered before answering the standards question.
Okay, so again, were you
Well,
going to answer that?
I'm just,
Okay.
was going to say, I think that what the manager's trying to explain is the procedure set forth in the city's charter is that there is no decision on the validity of any referendum petitions that are filed until they're filed. And that's why this was on there as a discussion and informational for the purposes of the audience to be aware of that and for each of you to be aware of that. But the charter does not allow you to vote on this question until that happens.
Though similarly, when we're presented with the protest petition, I would assume that it's up to the commission to determine whether or not we accept the petition,
Absolutely.
which is a discussion we have not engaged in yet this evening.
And to be very clear, that is what I would like to discuss. Because we got this last minute, we didn't have a copy of it, and I don't feel like I have a full grasp of the understanding of the protest petition, and would like the opportunity, given that conversations about court action were had in public comment, to fully understand what's going on here. That's what I'm concerned about. The right to referendum information, I'm wonderful. We'd love to have that conversation in public.
So, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to follow up from the reason why I brought that question up was Mr. Charles and Mr. Huff did answer it for me, saying that my initial question is going, this is for informational purposes, because my interpretation was that we don't decide until the signatures are done and get certified and sent up to us, and it's on our desk for us to decide. So I thought we have an opinion from the attorney, multiple, and then but we don't have to make that decision today because there's nothing to really decide. So that was how I interpreted it, understanding now that we have a protest petition in hand. I remember Mr. Huff mentioning, because I kind of said two things. One, kind of he was essentially, following up, I guess, sticking with his original opinion, but putting that aside, what I thought I heard is that he said that this wasn't fully completed correctly. So I guess if it's not completed correctly, if it holds no ground even to affect anything tonight, then I don't know what we're discussing. But to the points with some of the people here are wondering about what is this exactly about, or what exactly makes it not complete. I'm definitely interested in maybe if we wanted to have a closed session to really understand why, so we were all on the same page to understand why it's not complete versus, because obviously if it was complete, then it would make sense to me to go, okay, yeah, let's have this discussion, because obviously this brings it up to the forefront of whether it's a legislative or administrative move that we're doing. So, but with that being said, though, with the motion on hand, I just wanted to make that point, is that because of those two things, I would vote no.
Folks, we are discussing some stuff up here. If you could please let us have our discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, so
sorry.
again, just to
I
say
couldn't
that
hear you.
because of those 2 points, I would probably, I will vote no on moving 9A up for discussion, because my understanding was that we weren't going to discuss it at all. It was informational purpose only.
Okay, all right. So that being said, I think everybody's weighed in. So the motion on the table is to move 9A up and have that discussion now, here in chambers, prior to going to a vote. So all those in favor of moving that agenda item up and discussing that now, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed?
No.
No. All right, motion does not carry. So we have, right now, we have before us agenda, I'm sorry? It's not a lockout, ma'am, I'm so sorry. Okay, we're going to continue to do the business of the city. Thank you for weighing in. We did take public comment for a lengthy amount of time. Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So we do have this agenda item before us, which is to consider the final reading and approval of Gaslight Investors PUD amendment and resolution. We have,
Nothing on the table at the moment.
thank you. May I have a motion and a second on this agenda item, and then we will go for more discussion.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any further discussion on this agenda item, which is the final reading and approval of Gaslight Investors PUD amendment and resolution?
Yeah, again, I would like to say that de facto, our vote this evening is for the approval of standards, and whether we're running a legislative or an administrative process. I would say the onus would especially be on the administrative side of things, coming from the Zoning Board of Appeals and having been taught and retaught a true administrative decision-making tree or thought process or flow chart in terms of what a true administrative decision really is supposed to encapsulate. I think it was Paul who said it best, that it's a near religious devotion to the wording of the standards, right? Where we act legislatively, I guess, in terms of our personal convictions, although, right, we're supposed to be informed from our residents, city staff. We pull in a lot of our own background into these conversations, whereas, as again, we were mentored last week by Mr. LeBlanc. If it doesn't fit every single one of the standards, it is not supposed to be passed. So I really think tonight's vote, especially if we end up going down an administrative realm, which I believe we could also vote on as a commission to determine which of those two we feel it should best be. I'll leave that up to the rest of the commission to decide if they would like to take that up. For me, not having actually been at the conversation on July 21st for that commission meeting, to actually be here to contribute to that conversation for me is wildly inconclusive. And I would ask the rest of my commission to search their thoughts in terms of some of the things that occurred during that conversation that should not have, if it was truly administrative, or did not, unfortunately, either by purposeful or unfortunate omission, that an approval of standards this evening based part and parcel on the vote for an affirmative for the concept plan is a true violation of the decision-making process that we've been asked to perform as city commissioners, again, either through the lens of a legislative or administrative process.
And Madam Mayor, if I can speak to that too, I have an opinion. So regarding the standards of approval, specifically the definition of character, after reviewing the master plan and consulting privately with our city attorney, I have now a clear understanding of how the term is applied within the standards of approval, specifically C and D. Because of this, I don't believe it's necessary to reopen another discussion attempting to redefine the term, since it's already been clearly addressed by Mr. Giannotti, Mr. LeBlanc in his memo, and in the master plan. Now, we did review the standards of approval in detail at our July 21st meeting, including the discussion of character. When asked, Mr. Giannotti provided a definition that the city views character in the context as the way that the space and surrounding spaces have historically been used. In the case of Gaslight Village, Its character is defined as mixed-use spaces where commerce and residential living meet. This is also reinforced by the master plan and its accompanying illustrations. So I find it inappropriate to retroactively repudiate the 2004 City Commission, the mayor at that time, and the residents' decision affirming that the original design and PUD met all the standards of approval. And this is especially true given that the amended concept plan that we are reviewing today is, in my opinion, an improvement on the original plan, which, if we remember, that old one allowed for a 7-story building without setbacks, no attainable housing, and fewer public gathering spaces. 2 of the original planned buildings, A and B, have already been constructed. And I believe that most would agree that they were built in harmony with the character of Gaslight, without altering the essential nature of the area. With that precedent, I see no reason to believe the remaining buildings would be any different. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
Yes, I normally don't read notes for this sort of occasion, but there is a lot to address here, and I know that there are a lot of people whose interest was piqued most recently, and so this will be a little bit long, but I wanted to be thorough. This vote is a long time coming and on a very complex project, and so I have these prepared comments so that I can explain my vote and make clear exactly where I'm coming from. And I'll soon ask Lori to put up some visuals because you'd rather look at things than hear me drone on, I'm sure, at some point. So this commission is called to wear different hats at different times. Oftentimes, we find ourselves in policy-making mode. We have discussions surrounding go-forward strategy for pedestrian safety, including the implementation of RRFB, that's the Rapid Flashing Beacon Installation Guidelines. Those are things that we've discussed at length, and I think we're all proud of where we come out on when we work collaboratively. We've also made choices about whether to allow ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We've made choices about how we spend tax dollars, including the park millage. In all of these decisions, public opinion is at the core of the process. We represent our wards, we take their pulse on these matters, and the Manhattan Park project was a perfect example of this. We had town halls, we had robust discussion with residents as well as disagreement on the commission. We address concerns of residents. We debate the best locations for features and debate whether they belonged at the site at all. There was no rubric for our choice, just a community deciding how to spend its own funds in their own park. And I think it's a process that we're all very proud of and an outcome that is embraced by the community. Sometimes, however, we are not in policy-making mode. Sometimes we are called on to evaluate facts applied against legal standards and what amounts to a more administrative role. It is still deeply impactful and requires subjectivity at times, but it is different from policy setting. This happens routinely when the City Commission served as this happened routinely when the City Commission served as a ZBA, before the ZBA was formed as a separate entity. In those cases, even if every neighbor wanted the variance to be granted, the commission was called upon to apply the standards of review. It's not always popular, but it is fair. And while reasonable minds may differ on whether a standard has been met, our personal opinions on whether we like or don't like a property owner's plans are irrelevant. Over the past months, I have noticed that the role of City Commission in the process of reviewing Gaslight Investors' proposal has been blurry in many minds, and I don't think this is done in bad faith. This is an extremely emotional topic for many, if not all of us. We all care very deeply about our community, its future, and I'm really proud to be a part of a community that is so passionate. So it's important to remember what the question is before us and the task before us. Can you put up the first visual, please? I'll back up from the start of things and try to go through this quickly. But what we have is a property owner who came to City Commission in the early 2000s requesting a rezoning of the parcels at issue today. They wanted to turn it into a PUD, complete with 5, 6, and 7-story residential towers, commercial spaces, and mixed-use space. There was no park, there was no town square, no public roads, no north-south pedestrian connection. Planning Commission reviewed, City Commission reviewed, prolonged discussions were had with residents. I wasn't there, but by all accounts, it was tense at the time. This was a huge policy decision for the city. The question being, do we want to allow this rezoning? Do we allow up to 7 stories of residential, add commercial space? These are big questions that would change the landscape of Gaslight Village. And ultimately, City Commission voted to change our city's zoning ordinance to create a PUD on the site. This changed the zoning map. A rezoning is subject to protest petition, and in fact, it was called to a vote, and the PUD was approved by a majority of residents. So now we have a valid and existing PUD. The site plan shown here, which is now called a concept plan under our new PUD ordinance language, this site plan was approved as part of that PUD. It has no expiration date. You'll notice buildings A and B, the Bodie's and Carolina building corners were completed, and for a number of reasons, the remaining phases were not built. Next slide, please. And now the developer wants to amend the concept plan, not rezone the property, but to make changes to the concept plan. The general uses are the same, a combination of residential and mixed use, but the shapes have moved, the stories decreased, the number of residential units increased. Our commission is called on to review those changes, applying the standards of review in our code to the proposed plan. Our job is not to decide whether this is the best design possible, not to demand that it looks like what we want it to be, although I and others have made pretty drawings and suggestion. And our job is not to try to suss out the breakdown of public opinion, but rather to determine if it meets legal criteria. In this way, it does not matter if a commissioner is personally for or against the development, or if 32 people emailed us asking to approve, but 35 people emailed asking us to deny. This is a very uncomfortable position we are in. There's no doubt about that. And public comment is not without merit in this setting. I want to give credit to the residents who have pushed us to push the developer on issues important to us and them, and credit to my fellow commissioners who have encouraged pushing the envelope on this project. As my colleague to my right here has said before, conflict leads to better outcomes, and I believe we collectively have made this version of the plan better than the first submission through our efforts and through your public feedback. Today, we are called upon to review this plan. This is the submission of the property owner, and due process requires that we vote on this plan. Our individual votes up here will be based on whether we find that this submission to change the 2004 concept plan satisfies the standards of review. Trying to take the emotion and personal preference out of the decision-making process is challenging, but as a property owner myself and having sat on the ZBA, having sat through all of the trainings involved with that and learning from my colleagues on the ZBA, I see great value in keeping decisions like this, ones that statutorily demand a review of a proposal based on defined factors grounded in the law. Whether we like or don't like our neighbor, trust or don't trust our neighbor is irrelevant to their rights. Whether we'd prefer they build a Tudor instead of a ranch doesn't matter, so long as they meet zoning and building codes. This is not to say that no policy forward thinking is involved in this decision-making process before us tonight. We actually have a policy document that guides development in our city. It is the master plan. Every master plan comes from months of work and community feedback. It's a process led by the Planning Commission, composed of residents, the Planning Commission itself composed of residents, and reflects feedback from residents through surveys, town halls, discussions. Public hearings are held, and the City Commission must approve the master plan. Lori, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. The master plan process sets the goals and aspirational direction of the city. I've included a few excerpts from the master plan to help me demonstrate these points. On slide 8, the master plan lays out the master plan is intended to lay out what development will reflect our character. It says we draft this document while preserving the essence and character of the community. Next slide, please. It also lays out the goals. The goals set out by this community were to focus on additional and diverse housing, to encourage walking, and sets as our goal that Gaslight Village should be positioned to adapt Next slide, please. I'd like to point out other parts of the master plan too. The master plan calls for a north-south pedestrian connector. You can see that in the option 2A that's in the bottom left. And then you can also see on the top, the master plan, the top left corner, which is from page 31, shows a drawing that the narrative on this page says is meant to inspire the desired change. And it recognized the private ownership of the property, specifically saying, quote, "The intent is to indicate to the property owners the type and design that would best meet the plan's objectives." And what we see in that drawing is something that I find to be very similar to what is on the right, which is what is proposed. It has that option 2A north-south pedestrian pathway. It has a throughway from the north-south that has residential to the north, that has mixed use in the middle. When you overlay those two plans, there are so many similarities. I also note that the master plan states the overall goal is to protect the residential character of the community and quality of life. This does not change the residential character of our residential zones. This project is confined to our business district. And while this is speculation, I hope that adding a variety of housing types in this way will actually help to preserve our current neighborhoods by providing additional opportunities for living. With all of this taken together, the master plan has spoken on the community's opinion on what it wants for Gaslight and what reflects our community's perspective on the character of Gaslight. When you compare these two drawings, what I see is that they did what our community asked for in the 2018 master plan. It improved upon the 2004 approved concept plan by designating actual community space within a social zone. That space is roughly twice the size of the green space you might see in downtown Grand Rapids at the Studio Park area. This space can be utilized for all the things that we currently lean on Gaslight investors for: hosting the Christmas tree site, closing down their private streets for events like the recent Wednesdays on Wealthy that we've all enjoyed. This plan has a north-south pedestrian-only path so our families can get from Gaslight to Waterfront without having to go down Lakeside. And when we talk about character, we also have a judgment from a court wherein the judge explicitly says that the 2004 concept plan with 7 stories and mixed-use development would not alter the character of the neighborhood. It is with all of this in mind and more that I work through the standards of review and find them to be satisfied for the concept phase. This is consistent with the master plan. This does not alter the essential character of the surrounding area. The project is confined to the business district of our community. The proposal for the north side of the development is residential in nature and tapers into the neighborhood to the north, which is a mixed residential and commercial zone. The buildings on the east side of the PUD will be mainly residential and abut an apartment complex that has permission to build to 60 feet or more at any time. And the remaining sides abut commercial. In my view and evaluation, these are all harmonious uses. I'll return to my earlier point. What is our task in reviewing this project? It is to review the concept plan through the lens of these standards and then put pen to paper to ensure that this community is protected as the project details are fleshed out in the final review phase. As it is a concept plan, we cannot hold the submission to the standards of final review, but we can be very clear on what needs to be satisfied in the final stage for them to receive final approval. That's why we have these conditions, which we and Planning Commission have carefully crafted and thoroughly discussed for months. There are a few final points I want to make, 3 short and then 1 longer in closing. First is the threat of litigation that people have thrown out. I want to be clear, and I know I said this before, I do not know of, and I don't think anybody else has had direct threat of litigation, and that's not the same as anticipating potential outcomes. I take this role very seriously in protecting this community, and anticipating all of the potential permutations that could happen after this is important, and anticipating whether that could be litigation and who might sue is part of that responsibility. And I would like to clarify the quote that was attributed to Attorney Huff, he did not say he would rather be sued by the city as a preference. It was an evaluation of our chances of success. The second point I would like to make is on the point someone has made of whether we get to choose whether this is administrative or legislative. This is not a choice, and I don't think it's fair to frame it that way because none of us are looking to take away the voices of our community. We cannot pick. We don't get to say whether this is administrative or legislative the same way we don't get to say Reed's Lake is an ocean instead of a lake anymore. This is not a choice. It just is what it is, and we have to go with legal interpretation. The third brief point I'll make, and I know this is long, is the matter of the brownfield tax incentive. The brownfield tax incentive question is not before us today. That's not to say that we've never uttered the words brownfield or tax incentives or anything in that category. The point is we have not decided on anything. We don't even have a brownfield development authority established. The question before us is this concept plan. And while we expect that the developer will submit a request at some point, we simply are not there yet. To say that we have agreed to any tax incentive structure is flat out wrong. All of those meetings and discussions will be held publicly if and when a proposal from the developer is submitted. The final point I want to make is on the matter of safety. And I think we are all in agreement that it would be unacceptable to let this project begin without mobility, traffic, and parking studies. Full stop. And I would like to be very clear that they will be done before any shovel goes into the ground. Full stop. The concept plan approval stage is not the end. And our draft comes with many conditions that must be satisfied at the final plan review stage, which goes through both planning and city commission. Approval at the concept plan stage is akin to saying you've met rough draft standards, but here are the items you must absolutely address in your final draft. This is far from final. The developer does not pass until every item is checked off at final plan review, including the specific conditions we've identified. If there's one thing we all agree on, it is that the safety of our residents is a top priority, which is why we require through these documents parking and mobility studies to prove that the final plan is safe. These studies and more must be provided if and when the developer presents a final plan for approval. So your next logical question might be, why not do the studies now? We did hire an independent traffic analyst to look at the data we have today with respect to that area. We've all seen those reports. And the expert's analysis is that at this phase, the concept plan meets the standards required for this phase. Of course, this is not sufficient to say start building. It's not sufficient for you, it's not sufficient for me, which is why conditions addressing this were written into the resolution. Approving the concept plan means that the developer can move forward with more details on their plan. That includes the type of commercial space on the main floors of C and D, as well as how many bedrooms will be in each residential unit, the exact flows and parking configurations. These details are very important data points that are used by experts in their calculations and analysis. For example, there are different parking needs for studios versus 3-bedroom apartments, and healthcare-related space has different handicap-accessible parking requirement numbers than a retail space. A concept plan, by definition, does not have these details. This phase is about rough draft level items like building locations and building uses. It is deeply important to me that in-depth parking, traffic, and mobility studies be done with the best available data. And that can't come until there is a more detailed plan, which will not emerge until we're past a concept phase. I'll also note that we are requiring through these documents that the study area includes surrounding intersections, such as Bagley and Lake, and not just immediately adjacent intersections. As we all know, the impacts of this development will be felt outside of the parcels themselves. And these studies must be done at each phase, should the developer choose to phase this out. If the results of any of these studies we mandate through the conditions in the resolution indicate deficiencies at the final stage, the developer must adapt. That could be reducing the number of units, eliminating a building, pulling the whole project, among other options. However, the commission will not approve a final plan until we are satisfied that the final plan addresses our community's legitimate concerns on traffic, mobility, and parking, among other items, including fiscal viability. The burden shifts to the developer to prove that their plan is safe and workable, and we have the right to deny the plan at the final stage if it is not. I am confident that we have put in the safeguards to let the process continue, let the final designs be completed, and the important studies be completed on full data. With all this in mind, I will be voting to approve the ordinance amendment and resolution. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other thoughts before we go to a vote?
You want to go? I mean,
I
that's a
think
hard act
you
to
did.
follow.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm going to keep mine brief, not to go over many of the same things, because I could just say exactly what Lauren Schwartz said. But I'm supporting this amendment as well. I think it reflects a unanimous recommendation from our Planning Commission, along with clear endorsements from our city staff and our independent experts, which has been defined very thoroughly by Commissioner Schwartz. And I just want to echo that this is a vote for a concept plan only. This is not a final design. Advancing it now allows the developer to bring more detailed studies and engineering that we've required while the city maintains full authority at the final planning stage, or at the final plan stage. Importantly, this concept aligns with the long-term vision for Gaslight laid out in our master plan, which I view as our guiding document and for what our citizens have been asking for. So with all that being said, I am also a yes on this.
Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts before we go to a vote?
Question, I think there's some disagreement here about whether the city commission could vote to choose a legislative process or an administrative one.
Well, right now we have this.
I think I heard from city staff this past week that it was up to city commission to determine that question.
It's up to the city commission to determine if a referendum petition is filed, whether they're going to accept the referendum petition or rule it out of order. Can't be done now because we don't have a petition pending in front of us. The issue of the protest petition is different in the sense of when it arrived here. And while I agree with the comment that the statute doesn't specify a time frame for arrival other than that it had to be before your vote, the filing of a petition at that late date means that it has to be in order. And if it's not in order, which it's not, I don't see how you can hold up the vote. This process has been going on for over a year. There were many, many months where that petition could have been filed, and it didn't have to wait till 25 minutes before 5 o'clock. But it's still up to you as a board how you want to deal with that petition. That's not my decision to make.
That's the next part of our conversation. Right now, we have a motion and a second on this first agenda item, and then we are going to move on to item 9A, correct?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, maybe I didn't ask my question correctly. The process in general, right, the process we've been on for these many months, we've been asked to take an administrative decision-making, calling it administrative this evening, correct? And so in terms of our vote here on agenda item 9, is that what we're being asked to base our administrative decision on? Or is the administrative versus legislative question simply due to these other items that we have kind of
I
outstanding?
don't see that distinction affecting this vote. I mean, I guess that's how I would say it. There could be an impact on this vote depending on what you decide later on with regard to those questions. But I don't think whether you view what you're doing as legislative or administrative affects what it is that you're voting on to either allow or not allow.
But it does impact how many votes are required to approve,
That's correct.
right? So I think that I don't think that we can just ignore the petition that's been put in front of us, because it does impact this vote and how many votes is needed.
However, our city attorney has told us that the petition is improper and it wasn't completely filled out.
So a
If
couple of,
I may, Madam
Mr.
Mayor.
Charles, if I could please finish. Yes, our city attorney has given us that opinion. I also asked the city attorney, is it up to us to determine whether or not we accept it? And he said, yes, that is the commission's decision, not the city attorney's decision. And we have made no such decision. We can't individually make that decision. We have to make that decision collectively.
But a motion
So,
was
well,
made
if I could continue,
to move the
please.
agenda item, and the motion was turned down. The body has voted.
But if I could continue what I was saying, please. What I'm saying is we have not taken up the protest petition before us. And I am saying it would be improper for us to hold this vote until we do deal with that, because that does affect this vote. That affects how many votes we need to pass this amendment. I mean, in terms, and I go back to saying, yes, we've received an opinion. We've also heard from another attorney who has a different opinion. I think we need to do due diligence on considering whether or not this is an acceptable petition, whether or not it meets criteria. By our own admission, we don't have a published process for this. So for residents to know what it is that they need to submit, I don't think is a fair standard to apply. And in terms of the timeline, I don't think that I'm trying to go back to the actual language of the state statute, but I think that it has to happen after an amendment is actually introduced, and that hasn't been on the table for a year. So they haven't had a year to submit this, and they have met the statutory deadline. My whole point is we have to take this up out of duty to our residents, out of duty to them, meeting the statutory requirements of the law, to make a decision about whether or not it's going to impact the vote that's on the table.
They could have filled this petition in January.
Is that when we introduced the amendment?
No, it's got nothing to do with the amendment. It's a question of if an amendment is going to come up, you're just setting the standard for telling the commission that they're going to have a different level of.
But this, again, the language says prior to final legislative action.
That's the absolute deadline to get it there.
Correct, which they met.
Assuming that it
Which
was
they met.
valid. No, but assuming that it was a proper.
Assuming it was a proper
But what are
petition.
the standards for it being a proper petition?
I'm saying it's not a proper petition because the state law doesn't authorize this type of petition on this type of action that's being taken tonight.
Because your opinion is that it is administrative rather than legislative,
That is correct.
right? So it's not about whether or not,
Makes absolutely no difference. This isn't a popularity contest to do we want to do this, do we want to make people feel better? It's a question of what does the law allow?
Correct.
And in my opinion, the law would not allow this petition to be accepted.
I do understand that, and I do respect your opinion, and I do think that respecting one's opinions does not preclude others from having differing opinions.
I agree with that.
And ultimately, it comes back to, we as a body have to determine, we have to take into consideration the opinions that are given to us, but it's our responsibility to determine whether or not we accept this protest petition and whether or not it impacts the vote that we are about to take.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Huff, just to clarify, so regardless of does the commission accept or not, if there are 5 votes in the affirmative, the discussion about the protest petition is basically moot.
Is irrelevant.
Is relevant,
Just as
okay.
if there is not a referendum petition filed, any discussion about having a referendum is irrelevant.
But just, and so for my clarity, is, in your opinion, the petition we received this afternoon is not fully complete and therefore irrelevant to this vote, in your opinion?
I think
What we're
it's,
doing.
A, not relevant under the law, and B, even if it were relevant under the law, it is not sufficient for you to be able to act on it, and probably could not act on it for many weeks.
Okay.
because of its deficiencies.
Thank you. Given that, I believe everyone has had their say and their opponent. We do have a vote before us, and a motion and a second are on the table. So now it is time to go to a vote.
We have not finished the discussion.
If you have something to add about this agenda item,
I think others do as well.
I have not made my comment yet.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I kept looking down your way, I didn't see any.
No, that conversation was actually important to me, so,
Okay.
thank you. To me, the conversation before us is incomplete at this point. One of the things that is sort of a specter in this conversation that we're not talking about, but consistently hangs over what we talk about, is the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and whether or not that is going to be part of the future of this development. And without that knowledge, I find it personally difficult to weigh in on whether or not this concept plan is ready to move forward. I believe that our role as commissioners is very multifaceted, but we have to hold many things in our hands at once. And that policy setting does matter significantly, and especially in the heart of our downtown, where so many people are affected and want to be and spend their time and see their future. I think until we have our arms around whether there will be changes based on a future negotiation, I just personally have a very difficult time. In addition to that, I think reasonable minds can disagree on the standards. When we discussed them back in July, I found that some of them are in order and some of them are not. My interpretation of the master plan, I don't think that it did at the time. We've seen some evolution, and I also find it difficult to understand, we were having a straw poll on the standards in July, and now we have something completely different that we're supposed to be evaluating. And all of that says to me that this is going to continue to evolve and continue to change, and that makes it difficult to lock in to what we have here. The way I understand this is that we are locked in to a baseline with off-ramps. And those off-ramps matter a lot. And, it may be that we end up taking one or two or more of them and seeing additional updates. And, I'm not comfortable with where we are at baseline at this point. So that is where I'm at, and I wanted to explain why I'm going to be voting no.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have another comment?
I do, yes. Just wanted to make sure that I'd left space for others as well. I feel like this is largely going to reiterate many of the points that I've made over the last series of meetings on this topic, but nonetheless, I think that it's important to reiterate where I am, where I think we are with this, and then circle back to this issue that's before us right now and I think needs to be triaged. I truly believe 99.9% of the community wants to see development on this land. We want to see it. No one is trying to block development. The comments that we received this evening about the urgency of adding housing units completely resonates with me. And to that end, I absolutely want to see this development be successful. What I see us doing right now, and I've tried to sound the alarm on this throughout the process, is that by deferring so many of these things that we could deal with and settle now to the future and saying, well, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We can still argue it out in the future. We can still say no in the future, is that we are just creating a very long process with lots of opportunities for this development to fail. And so it seems somewhat counterintuitive that my vote is currently no because I want this development to succeed. I want to say regarding the standards that I haven't really shifted a lot since our conversation on the 21st. But that I think when it comes down to where I think we're deficient in terms of meeting these standards at this time, is that we're not far off, but it's going to require some time and some effort and some collaboration with the community. I think that, you know, comments have been well received about how we have approached or not approached this issue of character, and we truly have not had a fulsome conversation openly, transparently, debating the merits and deciding how we want to handle it. It is woven throughout several of the approval standards, and so we cannot gloss over it or treat it lightly. Yes, we have heard, and again, I will acknowledge and I will say that I respect the opinions of our city staff, and at the same time, doesn't preclude disagreement. Our city staff has said, character is this. We have other documents from the American Planning Association that says character is this. We have an opinion from our own attorney that says the courts will say that character is whatever you say it is. And so for us to not have this full conversation is again, one of the big issues that's setting us up for a lot more contention down the road. On the issue of the mobility study, I have very much also recognized that this is an often cited quote-unquote roadblock that folks in the NIMBY versus YIMBY debate will cite as baseless and strategic sort of sleight of hand to distract us from the main points. And for us to know that the importance of doing this mobility study now, which it could have been done by now, as I've spoken to before, as we've heard from residents tonight and previously, it could have been done by now. We were told that it was going to be done before the second half of the Planning Commission hearing last year. Then we were told it was going to be done in the spring of this year. Then we were told, well, it doesn't have to be done now, so it can be done later. For me, the purpose of doing it now is that it comes largely to this question of density, right? When we can debate 147 units, is it too dense until we're blue in the face? But I don't actually know if that's too dense until I know how that's going to impact specifically mobility and the safety of everyone on the roads, and in particular, our most vulnerable road users. If it's too dense and there's too much car and we don't have room for the appropriate infrastructure, then we've got a problem that we need to identify right now, right? We need to know what infrastructure changes are going to be necessary, and I'm not confident that the ones that we might be talking about in the future are the ones that we need, because what I've seen in reports to date have to do with easing the flow of motor vehicles, adding lanes, widening roads, which make roadways less safe for all the other road users. It makes it less safe for cyclists, less safe for scooters, less safe for pedestrians. And so we need to look at this holistically. We have enough information at this point to do this. We need to do it now and resolve this issue. So to me, these two items, again, both of which I feel like, gosh darn it, we could have had done by this point in time. And so it feels like I'm saying delay, but I'm not. I'm saying this is still a thing that we need to do. You know, we're going to be going through a final approval process potentially 3 times. And if we have to return and relitigate these things that we haven't resolved yet 3 more times over the next decade plus, each time we have to do that, we threaten the success of this development that we all want to see. Now, on the topic of process, I've made clear in the last meeting, outside of this room, that I'm very uncomfortable with considering this action administrative rather than legislative. And beyond being uncomfortable, because it's not about how I feel, I don't think that the applicable laws support this interpretation. So trying to make this seem administrative, especially when the rubber meets the road on the impact that it's going to have in terms of suppressing the democratic rights of our residents in denying their right to referendum and potentially denying the acceptance of this protest petition, we need to uphold like the highest degree of scrutiny on the decision that we're making. I don't think any of us, I agree with Commissioner Schwartz, none of us are looking to or want to take away the rights of residents. But intent and impact are not always the same thing. And so we need to really carefully consider what the opinions and what the interpretations are, what the arguments are for or against, potentially in light of the protest petition, what we've heard today. Consider that we may need to pause and ask for a declaratory judgment. We need guidance at this point. We need to move forward confidently. If there's any question in my mind that we may not be making the right step, and the implication of that is that we suppress democratic rights, I have huge concerns. So circling back now to the protest petition, I want to come back and I want to reiterate, Madam Mayor, that it is up to this commission as a body to decide what we do with the protest petition. You cannot speak solely for the entire commission. We have to take this up and we have to decide what we're going to do with it this evening before we take a vote.
I guess I'll close with this. Thank you, Commissioner Groff-Blazak. Jerry Rosen, in his book Grand Bargain, when describing his central role in the city of Detroit's bankruptcy and restructuring, without hopefully avoiding the sale of its prized art possession, when he was initially selected as chief mediator between the city and its creditors, he went around to mentors and a lot of other people that he knew and trusted throughout the Detroit area and wanted the answer to one central question. And it was, do the people of the city of Detroit have legal standing? He was consumed by this. It's how the book starts off in the first chapter. He was consumed by the idea that this entire process could go on with something like 2,500 different creditors the city was having to negotiate with. And his job as chief mediator was to obviously strike good bargains so that the city could restructure. And the answer that kept coming back to him was actually no, that the residents don't have agency or legal standing. So possibly taking, the 2 or so million people in the city and putting them completely on the side while wealthy people sit and make decisions for them. And he said he was reminded of a quote he heard from an early mentor at one of his first law firms. The question was, or the statement was, when the question is repeatedly why, the answer's always money. And I want to know whether our residents have legal standing in this case. We're at completely opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of our positioning as a city currently than the city of Detroit was in 2011 or 12. I have been counseled that we can act legislatively here. So there's a difference of opinion. This end around to achieve the outcome of potentially disenfranchising and silencing residents, even the potential of it should give our fellow commissioners pause in taking any action this evening whatsoever. What do the residents want? Obviously, the residents want to be heard. What do the commissioners want? We want to provide you all a great end product. That's been my goal this entire time. But on the surface, this decision prioritized the developer and his legal team, not the city of East Grand Rapids, so far in my opinion. I feel like we've given away our leverage and bargaining power repeatedly. We have been told that right now we're under the threat of no lawsuit. So if we choose to run this process legislatively, that is within our purview to say. We could have, as Commissioner Groff-Blazak said, sought out a declaratory judgment. We could have just said, we're going to run it with our residents receiving the legal standing and let all the other consequences run the course that they may. There would have been just a simple change of course of action by the city to say, okay, I guess we're going to have to take it administratively, but we bent to the will of the opposing law firm, not the one that the city is being represented by. So with the idea that the optics of a very, very small town could potentially be that our residents were shut out of the process is something that, from having lived here for going on 20 years, obviously the community gets smaller every year, your kids get a little bit older, and unfortunately, you know, having right, the closeness that we do, walking dogs, seeing each other at soccer games and at the grocery store, I think this decision would be far better off legislatively run, and therefore put it back in the hands of the residents and let the results be what they are at that point. We are elected, but it's not to say, as all the commissioners have said, that we always get it right either. We have our city staff, incredibly talented and wonderful professional people in their own right, in their own professions. They may not always get it right. The one constant would be that the residents or the customer is always right. So, you know, as evidenced by tonight, I think we have a lot of friction in this town. Coincidentally, a guy I grew up with in Holland is calling out my spouse in public comments. So I don't want to I don't want to overstate the idea that we have tension, but I also don't want to underestimate it either. I also don't want to assume that we're going to package it up conveniently in our own minds, that there's this, you know, outcome that's going to be beneficial to all. I'm trying to remove as many friction points as I can from this process. That's why I'd ask my fellow commissioners to pause and reflect on this situation. Let's find a new list of conditions to take back to the developer that will satisfy these legitimate concerns, or vote this evening to talk through the petition, consider the legislative process, but just not bend to the will of a voice that's saying we're going to control this thing before, during, and after just because they say so.
Is now an appropriate time to ask a clarifying question on something that was said?
Who are you asking the question to?
Probably to Attorney Huff. I think I've asked this before, and I've heard my commissioners mention getting a declaratory judgment. And I believe I asked about this before, and my procedure professor would probably be annoyed with me, but there is no issue to have a declaratory judgment on yet, right? There has to be a decision.
There has to be a decision, there has to be a plaintiff, there has to be a defendant. We don't have those.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand that. I think it's been said, but we can't approach this evaluation of whether it's administrative with an end in mind. What we want is irrelevant. And of course, we do not want to take away our residents' right to vote on something, but you cannot take away a right that does not exist. And we can't change the law. It is what it is.
And the law is open to interpretation, and we have no resolution on how we interpret this law. And I defer to certainly those that deal in declaratory judgments, what we need to have before us. And maybe in short shrift we will. But it seems like the issue that is before us is one that we still need to take up tonight, so that potentially there is a decision, that there is a declaratory judgment about. We cannot ignore this protest petition.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, so we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, say yes?
Yes.
Oh, wait, no, we're doing, I'm sorry, roll call, right? Sorry. Forget it.
Commissioner Hunter,
No.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs,
No.
Commissioner Burdick,
Yes.
Commissioner Groff Blasek,
No.
Commissioner Wesley,
Yes.
Mayor Favali.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, motion carries.
Does it? We haven't discussed this protest petition, and that is 4 votes and not 5.
So now we will go on to agenda item 9A, correct?
Yep. Just as I noted before, the intent of the memo was anticipation of potential action this evening to those who may be interested in pursuing the right of referendum, that the city clerk at the appropriate steps, as detailed in the charter, will provide the petitions pursuant to the city charter. City attorney and the clerk and I spent quite a bit of time last week talking about this issue because there was a question of administrative versus legislative, which is so what we did was go back and simply look and go, okay, if there was a vote this evening, what's next? And we know there is an interest in right of referendum. So that process, if people are interested in pursuing it, we will the clerk will fulfill her statutory responsibilities pursuant to the city charter.
Was there anything, Mr. Huff, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, I know that you ignored me previously, but
I'm not ignoring you. We had a vote, and we are trying to move on with the agenda. No one is ignoring you, Commissioner.
I still have a follow-up question.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay.
But no one is ignoring you. No one has ignored you the entire evening. Everyone's been very attentive.
Okay. So I did ask the question that was not answered. Did the motion carry or not? Because we have still not dealt with the protest petition and whether or not that's going to apply. I know
Our city attorney,
I know that our city attorney has given us an opinion. I know what you have said. And I also know that our city attorney confirmed that this body has to decide. Not him, not you, but the body.
Mr. Huff, can you please be
I
more
think-
specific about what that was your intent with that statement?
I mean, I think the body just decided.
Okay. Thank you.
We voted, but how did we decide?
It seems to me that the group that voted, if there were a vote on the issue of the protest petition.
There was materially not a vote on the protest petition.
Okay. I'm not going to argue. We can agree to disagree, Commissioner.
So how does the protest position get invalidated officially? Is there a mechanism that has to occur in order for it to be invalidated?
Well,
So
currently it
there's
isn't
two, can I clarify? I don't want to.
Yes, please.
I heard that there were two reasons why you were advising us that the protest petition could not be rightfully considered tonight, legally considered tonight. The first of which is that this is an administrative decision, not a legislative decision, and so that right does not apply.
Correct.
Personally, I am in agreement with that, and that's not a reflection on whether I want people to vote. Frankly, this would be easier if we could all just step away and say, let's put it to a vote.
100%.
But I am here to follow the law and do my duty, and I'm reading this, and I am listening to the advice of our council, and I share that opinion. I am curious, and, with my reasoning in mind, I am one of 7 votes. So with that first step in mind, this isn't even relevant, but I am curious about whether this is even valid, a valid protest petition. I'd be curious to know more about that. This is totally new to me, but I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that the 2311 Wealthy Street, that's probably a condo association. Can individuals even participate, or does a condo association have to? I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I have so many questions about whether this would even be valid. Because if somebody does want to, somebody does sue and say, Judge, we want this to be seen as a legislative decision, then the validity of this does become relevant. Does that make sense?
It could become relevant, but
Yeah.
it's still, as I say, there'd be a lot of work to do to try and determine whether this petition was sufficient.
But the amount of work is not a reason to ignore it, correct?
We can't even do the work, Commissioner. They haven't given us enough information to do any of the analysis. We don't have any proof of ownership. We don't have any proof of surveys showing what percentage of this.
Typically, I would see that as I would accept that as okay, so we don't have enough information, then we need to go back and request it. Again, this comes back to if there was a policy stated somewhere that's very clear that says this is what needs to be included in a protest petition, then I would say, okay, yeah, then we can look at it tonight very quickly and we can say it does not meet those requirements. But as we don't have a policy, we don't have guidelines published, and there's none included in statute, I don't think that that's a reason that we can say we cannot consider this.
Do we know how a court, this cannot be the first time that somebody contemplated one of these being challenged, so like, what is it that a judge is looking for in evaluating? I don't know if you, this is so hard to like call off the top of your head, but like, what is it that supports a protest petition?
I mean, actually, the whole area of referendum and protest petitions is pretty sparse because they really don't happen very often. Referendum are not available in certain communities in the state of Michigan. The state allows communities to opt in, and if you don't opt in, you don't have those rights. The protest petition is a state statute, so a little different standing on that issue, but they don't come up very often. I mean, trying to find case law on that is difficult.
Okay.
I mean, we certainly, we can pursue whatever you want us to pursue on this. I mean, if you want us to look into how we get this information, we'd have to, start by going back to the people who signed this petition and ask for them to produce a lot more than they did at this point.
So is that normally done leading up to the production of this to the city? Is that, I'm assuming that's what you were getting at when you said,
Right.
like, it came at the last minute, we couldn't go back to them and say, hey,
Right, we can't.
staple your deed to
If we
this
had
real
looked
quick.
at this 5 weeks ago,
Yeah, I don't think they get it.
could have done that. Good?
Sorry?
I don't think they give a do-over. I mean, what they submitted was what
Right.
they submitted.
That sounds.
The issue is,
Everybody, please, one at a time, please. If you want to come up and explain your thoughts, perhaps. Thank you. Mrs. Anderson, you may sit down. Thank you.
I don't think he has really standing in this conversation, respectfully.
I think he asked to offer his opinion, and I'm allowing it. So
Are
he
we
can
going to
offer his
allow
opinion.
all of the other residents to weigh in as well?
He is actually a legal advice, and
Not
we're
our legal
seeking-
advisor.
We're seeking legal thoughts on this.
But he is not our legal advisor.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm willing to address whatever you'd like, but from our perspective, whatever petition was submitted, that's what you have to work with. The vote has occurred, that petition is what it is, and if it's deficient, if it doesn't identify the land, if it doesn't identify the percentages that are required, then it's deficient, it can't be used. That would be our position. Not to mention the other position with respect to it being an administrative act.
So, yeah, that makes sense. But the vote has already occurred. It wasn't necessarily, like, what's the official invalidation mechanism? Is there one where you have to
So if I.
fill out a
if I-
form
if
and
I-
say this has been invalidated?
If I may, we have this evening. Let me discuss this with the city attorney tomorrow, and we will kind of work through next steps on that.
Are you allowing input from?
No, thank you. No, we're not allowing. We've had public comment. Thank you.
Input from an attorney who's-
I was asked, yes, I allowed legal advice from the attorney, yes. That's exactly what's happening. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yes, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for that opinion. Mr. Huff, did you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could ask for clarity about Mr. Charles, you said that you're going to talk to Mr. Huff tomorrow. To what end?
We're going to digest, and then we'll go from there. I'm not going to, Mr. Alpha and I need to basically debrief tomorrow and kind of whatnot. If there's something that in that conversation he finds, I should say, that some other action by the commission is needed in regards to the protest petition, we'll provide that update to the commission.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Not entirely, because again, I come back to this idea that certainly have a discussion about your opinion on it, but ultimately, it's something that this commission in its entirety has to determine. Like, we can take opinion about what there might need to be done, but ultimately, we have to make that decision. Is that correct?
So would you add, like, I'm trying to understand what you're seeking here. So would that be like, who concurs, is the question who concurs with our attorney's legal opinion?
I would say that we have to decide what we're going to do with this protest petition, and thus whether or not the vote that we just took approves the concept plan or not. Like, that still, to me, seems undecided.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've asked this several times, and I'm not sure I've heard an answer, but like, is it invalidated, Attorney Huff? Sure. Because you had sort of stated that it was, right? I mean, I would think that there's just some more formal legal mechanism behind the scenes that would invalidate something like this versus words. And again, I'm not taking any professional point with words, but I'm saying it wasn't, how does a body officially invalidate a document like this?
May I just say, as somebody who joined you guys' opinion about the concept plan, how I took this all into account was this was essentially a pocket decision of the commission not wishing to vote on the petition. And that's the vote's done. And therefore, like, the decision was also made implicitly. Not explicitly, but implicitly.
That's what Mr. Huff was saying.
I believe so.
Right.
Yes. I mean, if this commission wants to and can get support to put a motion on the table to add to the agenda, a vote on this issue tonight, you can do that.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that's in the best interest of anybody to do that, because I think you know what the outcome of that vote's going to be.
I also want to give some time for our city staff and our city attorney to look at this thing. Like, we got printed off copies that got walked up to us during this meeting. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I haven't had a chance to ask any questions I might have with the city staff, with the city attorney. I'd be super uncomfortable voting if I think this is valid or not, when I haven't even a chance to flip through it.
But to Commissioner Skaggs's point, were you suggesting that because of the vote we took, it in effect invalidated this?
I don't think it validates or invalidates anything. I think it was the decision that we're not going to take it into account.
I see your concern.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to go into closed session, and we didn't, so.
Okay.
I think for tonight then, I mean, the vote is what it is, so you can call it a pocket decision?
Sure.
Sorry, pocket vote, sorry, I don't know what the term is. And I would agree that it's probably not in anybody's best interest to, as Attorney Huff had said, bring this to a vote on whether or not we think it's administrative or legislative. We had a informational item come in our packet, which I personally intended to discuss as informational. Given what I have read and seen and the discussion tonight, I do think that this is an administrative decision, but I would be happy to have staff, reconvene between now and the next meeting if there's more to be shared with us that's important. That's a possibility. I'm trying to figure out where, I mean, the vote is done, like, period, but like, I guess what is the action point from here? And my feeling is that I would like to know more. My opinion isn't really changed, but I'm maybe call it intellectual curiosity. I would like to know what it is that makes a protest petition like this valid in submission, separate from the question of administrative versus legislative. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that Mr. Charles and Mr. Huff have agreed that they'll discuss this further, correct? And get back to us.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we can move on to the consent agenda items. May I have a motion and a second for the consent agenda
So moved.
items?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
Let's give it to Wes.
Jay, you were very useful. I at least got to use it.